Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. Ghosts in the Corridor. Cole Ewing sat beside the hospital bed, his hand wrapped around fingers that felt too cold for someone who just brought life into the world. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, sterile and indifferent to the miracle that had occurred 2 hours ago. His son, his beautiful, perfect son, slept in the bassinet beside them, tiny chest rising and falling with the certainty of new life. Melissa Matthews, no, Melissa Ewing now, smiled at him from the bed, but something in her expression seemed wrong. Too practiced, too perfect, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "You should get coffee," she said softly. "You haven't slept in 26 hours. Cole nodded, though he wasn't tired. He'd learned long ago how to function on adrenaline and purpose. "You need anything? Just some iced chips." And maybe, she paused, her green eyes flickering to the door. "Maybe check if the birth certificate paperwork is ready? I want everything official before we leave." There was again that edge of urgency beneath her gentle tone. The same edge he'd noticed a dozen times over the past 9 months, always when discussing documents, accounts, or official records. Cole stood, stretching his 6-foot frame. At 42, he kept himself in shape, not vanity, but necessity. Control. The same control that had made him a successful appellate attorney and the same control that had gotten him through his divorce 3 years ago. "I'll be back in 15, he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. Her skin was clammy. The hospital corridor stretched ahead, painted in those institutional colors meant to be soothing, but only managed sterile. Cole walked past rooms where other families celebrated their own beginnings, past nurses' stations and supply closets, his mind already ticking through the checklist Melissa had given him. He was 10 feet from the elevator when he saw her. Courtney Osborne, his ex-wife, though she'd reclaimed her maiden name with unseemly haste after their divorce, stood frozen by the water fountain. She'd aged in 3 years, new lines etched around her mouth, her auburn hair now showing threads of gray she'd never have allowed before. She wore scrubs, hospital scrubs, which surprised him. Last he'd heard, she was managing a boutique in Scottsdale. "Cole." Her voice cracked on his name. "Courtney." He kept his tone neutral, professional. They hadn't spoken since the final decree. Their marriage had ended cleanly, if painfully. A mutual acknowledgement that love had calcified into resentment somewhere between his 80th hour work weeks and her complete inability to handle solitude. "I heard you remarried," she said, something strange dancing in her dark eyes. "Congratulations." "Thank you. What brings you to the maternity ward?" "I transferred here 6 months ago. Pediatric nursing." She smiled, but it looked like a wound. "Funny how life works out. You here for?" "My son was born this morning." The color drained from Courtney's face so fast Cole actually reached out to steady her, old instincts overriding present awkwardness. But she jerked back from his touch, her eyes wide and fixed on something behind him. Cole turned. Melissa stood in the doorway of her room, 20 yards away, her hospital gown hanging off one shoulder, her face sheet white. The two women locked eyes across the distance, and Cole felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. "No," Courtney whispered. "No, no, no. Cole, when did you meet her?" "That's my wife." He kept his voice level, but his gut tightened. "Courtney what?" But she was already backing away, shaking her head, her hands trembling. "You need to God I can't. I can't be the one to—" She spun on her heel and ran, literally ran, her white sneakers squeaking against linoleum as she disappeared around the corner. Cole stood frozen for 3 heartbeats. When he looked back, Melissa had retreated into the room. He found her sitting on the bed, her face still pale, but composed now, eerily composed. "What was that about?" he asked. "How should I know?" Melissa's voice was steady, but her fingers knotted in the blanket. "Your ex-wife, right? Maybe she's just bitter, seeing you happy with someone else, with a baby. It can make people crazy." It was a reasonable explanation. It made sense. But Cole's instincts, honed through 15 years of cross-examining witnesses and reading juries, screamed that something was desperately wrong. His phone buzzed. The text was from an unknown number, but he knew instantly who'd sent it. Courtney's words tumbled across the screen in frantic, half-formed sentences. Cole, please, you have to listen. Go to the police. That woman is not who she says she is. Her real name is Melissa Barrett, not Matthews. I know her. I know her. She destroyed my brother's life 5 years ago. Same pattern. Marriage, baby, then she took everything. You try to stop her, and Cole, he killed himself. She drove him to it. You have to protect yourself. Please. The baby might not even be yours. She uses insemination. Turkey based her with donor sperm. Check DNA. Please. She's dangerous. I'm sending proof to your email. Don't let her know you suspect. She has people. Be careful. I'm sorry I couldn't say this to your face. I'm just so scared for you. Cole read it twice, his heart rate steady despite the contents. He looked at Melissa, who was adjusting her hair in the small mirror beside the bed, humming softly. Everything okay? She asked, catching his eye in the reflection. Fine, he said. Just a work thing. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and sat down beside the bed, took her hand in his. Her pulse was rapid against his thumb. I love you, he said, watching her eyes. I love you too. The words came instantly, reflexively. Too fast. Like a recording. Cole smiled and squeezed her hand. Inside his jacket pocket, his phone buzzed twice more. Emails arriving. Proof, Courtney had said. He'd look at them soon. He'd examine every piece of evidence with a methodical precision that had made him one of Phoenix's most successful attorneys. But first, he'd play the role Melissa expected. The doting new father, the oblivious husband, the perfect mark. Because as he sat there holding the hand of a woman who might have been playing him for a fool, Cole Ewing felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The cold, clear certainty of purpose. If Melissa Barrett, or whoever she really was, thought she could destroy him the way she'd apparently destroyed Courtney's brother, she had severely miscalculated. Cole didn't lose. Not in court, not in life. And he certainly wouldn't lose to some con artist who'd picked the wrong target. The game was on. He just had to make sure she didn't realize she'd already lost. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Deception. Cole waited until midnight. Melissa slept fitfully beside him in the darkened hospital room, her breathing shallow and irregular. The baby, currently named Michael on the temporary paperwork, lay in the bassinet between them, swaddled tight and blissfully unaware of the fractures spreading through his parents' marriage before it had barely begun. The fluorescent glow from the parking lot filtered through the blinds, painting prison bar shadows across the walls. Cole sat in the uncomfortable recliner they'd called a father's bed, his phone screen dimmed to minimum brightness, and opened Courtney's emails. The first attachment was a newspaper article from Tampa, Florida, dated 5 years ago. The headline read, "Local businessman found dead in apparent suicide." The photograph showed a man in his 30s with Courtney's eyes, her brother, Daniel Osborne. Cole had never met him. Courtney had mentioned once that they'd been estranged, something about a bad relationship and family tensions. Now he knew why they'd been estranged. Daniel hadn't wanted to admit he was being destroyed. The article was brief. Daniel Osborne, 34, found dead from carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage. He'd been embroiled in a bitter divorce with his wife, Marina Osborne, née Barrett. The divorce proceedings had been contentious, with allegations of fraud and identity theft. Police had investigated, but found no evidence of foul play in his death. Marina Barrett, MB, Melissa Barrett. The second email contained more articles, these harder to find, from smaller publications and public records Courtney must have spent months compiling. Each told a variation of the same story. Tampa, 5 years ago, Marina Barrett married Daniel Osborne after a whirlwind 6-month romance. She got pregnant immediately. Within 2 years, Daniel's business accounts were emptied, his assets mysteriously transferred, his reputation destroyed by carefully planted rumors of embezzlement and domestic violence. The divorce papers were filed 2 weeks before his death. Marina disappeared shortly after the divorce settlement in her favor despite Daniel's allegations. The baby was never found in records, likely never existed, or was given up immediately for cash. Sacramento, 8 years ago, Margaret Brennan married Robert Shun, a software engineer with considerable stock options. Same pattern. Quick romance, pregnancy, systematic financial destruction, divorce, suicide. This time, Chun survived the attempt, but never recovered mentally. Margaret Brennan vanished with a settlement worth $2.3 million. Chicago, 11 years ago, Michelle Barrett married James McAllister. This time, she varied the pattern. No pregnancy, just marriage and financial manipulation. McAllister figured it out faster than the others and went to the police. The detective who investigated was named in the file, Morris Steele. His notes were included in Courtney's package, marked case closed, insufficient evidence. But Steele had added a handwritten note. Subject displayed sociopathic markers. Highly organized, patient, convincing. Network suspected, but not confirmed. Would not be surprised to see pattern repeat. Subject is dangerous. The timestamp on that note was 10 years old. Cole's hands were steady as he scrolled, but his mind raced. The woman sleeping 5 feet away had systematically destroyed at least 3 men's lives, possibly more. She'd refined her technique over a decade, learning from each iteration how to be more careful, more thorough, more devastating. And somehow, she'd chosen him as her next target. The question was why. Cole had money, certainly. His salary as a senior appellate attorney was substantial, and he'd made smart investments over the years. But he wasn't wealthy enough to retire. There were richer marks in Phoenix, men with easier access to liquid assets. Unless his phone buzzed. Another text from Courtney. I found her because of the name. After Daniel died, I became obsessed. I tracked every Melissa Marina Michelle with last names starting with B, Barrett, Brennan, Blackwell. She always uses MB initials. When I heard you married someone named Melissa Matthews, I pulled her records. The background is fake, Cole. All of it. Whoever made her papers is very good. But I found a photo from Daniel's wedding. It's her. Same face, same mannerisms, same everything. I'm attaching it now. The photo came through. A wedding picture, bright and joyful. Daniel Osborne in a tux, grinning like a man who'd won the lottery. And beside him, in a white dress and veil, was Melissa. Younger, her hair a different color, but undeniably her. Same smile, same cheekbones, same way of tilting her head that had first attracted Cole at that charity fundraiser 18 months ago. He remembered that night with painful clarity now. The Phoenix Children's Hospital Gala, black tie, and old money, the kind of event he usually avoided. But a client had insisted, and Cole had gone, expecting a few hours of tedious networking. She'd been standing by the bar, elegant in emerald silk, looking both perfectly placed and slightly lost. They'd struck up a conversation about the overpriced art being auctioned. She'd been witty, sharp, self-deprecating. She told him she'd moved to Phoenix 6 months ago for work, something vague in nonprofit management. She'd recently ended a long relationship and wasn't looking for anything serious. The lie had been perfect because it contained the exact truth he'd wanted to hear. Their courtship had been his idea, or so he'd thought. Dinner dates that stretched into long conversations. Weekend hikes in the Superstition Mountains. She'd been patient, never pushing, letting him set the pace. It was only after 3 months that she'd stayed over. After 6 that they'd discussed moving in together. After 9 that she'd cried in his arms about wanting a family before it was too late. She was 36, her biological clock was ticking, but she understood if he wasn't ready. He proposed a week later. Looking back through the lens of Courtney's evidence, every moment recalibrated into something sinister. The way Melissa had accidentally met his business partners. Her casual questions about his investment portfolio. Her suggestion they consolidate accounts after the wedding for simplicity. Her insistence on traditional vows including financial unity. Her unexpected pregnancy exactly 3 weeks after their courthouse wedding. Fast enough to lock down the marriage, but not so fast it seemed suspicious. She'd played him like a Stradivarius, and he'd danced to every note. Or had he? Cole looked at the sleeping woman again. Something Courtney had said in her first frantic text nagged at him. She is people. This wasn't a solo operation. It couldn't be. The fake identification, the seamless background, the ability to disappear after each mark that required resources, money, expertise, which meant Melissa wasn't the mastermind. She was the weapon. Someone else was pulling the strings. Cole opened a new text to Courtney. Don't contact me again unless I contact you first. Delete my number. If anyone asks, we exchanged pleasantries at the hospital, nothing more. Don't tell anyone what you told me. I need you to trust me on this. Can you do that? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, yes. But please be careful. These people are dangerous. Daniel tried to fight back, and they, just please, Cole, don't let them know you're onto them. I won't, he typed, then added, and Courtney? Thank you. For Daniel's memory, and for this warning. I won't let it be in vain. He deleted the text thread, then created a new encrypted email account using protocols that would take even a sophisticated hacker weeks to trace. He forwarded all of Courtney's evidence to himself at this new address, then deleted the emails from his regular account and cleared every cache. By 2 a.m., he created 6 more secure email accounts and begun organizing the information into a structure he could work with. By 4 a.m., he drafted a preliminary strategy. When the sun rose and Melissa woke with a smile, asking him to hold the baby while she showered, Cole was ready. He took his son, because regardless of biology, this child was innocent and looked into eyes that might or might not be his. It's okay, he whispered to the sleeping infant. Daddy's got this. The baby yawned, utterly trusting. Cole just wished he knew exactly what this was going to require. Chapter 3. The Paper Trail. They brought Michael home on a Tuesday to the house Cole had bought 2 years ago, a Spanish colonial in Arcadia with good bones and a yard big enough for a dog he'd never had time to get. Melissa had redecorated after they'd married, replacing his minimalist furniture with warmer pieces, adding art to the walls, making the space feel like a home instead of a museum to his divorce. Now he looked at every change and wondered, was she feathering a nest or cataloging assets? You're quiet, Melissa said from the passenger seat, Michael's car seat secure behind them. Having second thoughts about being a father? Her tone was teasing, but Cole heard the probe beneath it. She was testing him, trying to gauge if Courtney's warning had taken root. Just tired, he lied smoothly, and thinking about work. I have a Morrison appeal next week. The case about the contract dispute? I thought you had that locked down. She remembered. Of course she did. Melissa had made a point of remembering everything about his work, his cases, his clients. He'd thought it was interest. Now he recognized it as reconnaissance. Nothing's ever locked down until the judges rule, he said, pulling into their driveway. The house looked serene in the afternoon light, bougainvillea blooming fuchsia against the adobe walls. But yes, I'm confident. Confidence was his natural state. Melissa had commented on it early in their relationship, how he moved through the world with absolute certainty. He'd explained it as the product of his childhood, a military father who demanded excellence, a mother who'd taught him that hesitation was weakness. Cole had learned young to project authority even when he felt none. That skill had never been more crucial than now. Inside, Melissa immediately began settling in, her movements practiced and efficient. She set up the bassinet in their bedroom, organized the diaper supplies, started a load of baby laundry. Cole watched her work, noting the way she avoided certain rooms, how her eyes flickered to his home office door. I need to check work emails, he said. Just for an hour. Can you handle? Of course. She smiled, already reaching for Michael. We'll be fine. Take your time. He closed the office door and heard the lock click, a habit Melissa had never questioned, accepting his explanation about client confidentiality. Now, he wondered if she tried to get in here while he was at work, what she might have been searching for. But Cole hadn't been careless. Long before Melissa entered his life, he'd been paranoid about security, occupational hazard of handling sensitive appeals. His computer required 3 forms of authentication to access. His files were encrypted. His safe was hidden behind a false panel in the closet, protected by a combination only he knew. What Melissa didn't know was that he'd also installed security cameras throughout the house 9 months ago, disguised as smoke detectors and decorative objects. He told her they were for home security. Really, they'd been insurance, a habit from his divorce, documentation against future disputes. That paranoia was about to pay off. Cole pulled up the camera feed from the past 6 months and began watching at 4x speed, looking for patterns. Days when he was at the courthouse or in depositions. Times when Melissa thought she was alone. It took 3 hours to find the first anomaly. 2 months ago, 2 p.m. on a Thursday, Cole had been in oral arguments downtown. The camera in the living room showed Melissa letting someone into the house, a man in his 40s, dressed in business casual, carrying a leather messenger bag. Cole froze the frame and zoomed in. The man's face was visible, sharp-featured with salt and pepper hair. He looked familiar in a way Cole couldn't immediately place. They talked for 20 minutes, the man occasionally gesturing to paperwork he'd spread across the coffee table. Melissa nodded, took notes, pointed to several documents. Then they disappeared into the kitchen, out of camera range, for another 15 minutes. When they emerged, the man left. Melissa immediately gathered all the papers and took them upstairs, to the guest bedroom they designated as the future nursery. The camera there had been disconnected a week earlier, Melissa claiming she'd accidentally unplugged it while measuring for curtains. Cole pulled up his calendar. That Thursday, he'd been arguing the Brennan case, a corporate dispute involving complex asset transfers. He'd won. Melissa had celebrated with him that night, making his favorite dinner, being affectionate and attentive. He thought she was proud of him. Now he realized she'd been celebrating something entirely different. Who was the man? Cole ran the frozen image through facial recognition software, a tool he used occasionally for jury investigation. Nothing came back from standard databases. But when he cross-referenced with business registries and limited liability companies, he got a hit. Devin Hood, listed as the managing partner of Sentinel Trust Services, a Nevada-based LLC that specialized in asset protection and estate planning. The company website was deliberately vague, filled with stock photos and generic promises. But when Cole dug deeper using the legal databases his law firm subscribed to, he found something interesting. Sentinel Trust Services have been named in 3 different civil suits over the past decade, each time as the entity that had legally received assets from men going through divorces. Each suit had been settled quietly, with NDAs attached. The plaintiffs' names didn't match any of the identities Courtney had uncovered, but the pattern was there. This was the infrastructure. Melissa was the hunter, but Devin Hood was the one who skinned the kill. Cole leaned back in his chair, his mind assembling the puzzle. The operation was more sophisticated than he'd initially thought. Melissa would seduce and marry the target. During the marriage, she'd slowly gather information, account numbers, passwords, vulnerabilities. Then Devin Hood would appear, likely posing as a financial advisor or estate planner. He'd set up trusts and transfers that looked legitimate, but were designed to drain assets the moment divorce proceedings began. The pregnancy added another layer. It established immediate standing for support and settlement claims. If the baby wasn't genetically the husband's, and DNA tests took time, she'd have months to complete the transfer while the mark was distracted by shock and betrayal. It was brilliant. Sociopathic, but brilliant. The question remained, who was behind it? Hood was a facilitator, Melissa was the weapon, but someone was choosing the targets and coordinating the operations. Someone who'd been doing this for over a decade without getting caught. Cole's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You've been digging. Careful. We're watching." His blood went cold. He checked the number. Burner phone. Untraceable. He looked around the office, suddenly aware of his own security cameras. Had they been compromised? Or was this a bluff designed to scare him into tipping his hand? A soft knock at the door. "Cole?" "Michael's fussy. I think he wants his daddy." Melissa's voice, sweet and concerned. Cole deleted the text and took 3 slow breaths. "Coming," he called. He opened the door to find her standing there with their son, or the baby she claimed was their son, looking every inch the perfect wife and mother. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked. "You look pale." "Just a migraine," Cole said, taking the baby. Michael immediately settled against his shoulder, tiny fist curling into Cole's shirt. Despite everything, despite all the uncertainty and betrayal, Cole felt a fierce surge of protective love for this child. "Why don't you lie down?" Melissa suggested. I can handle the evening routine. I'm fine, Cole said. Actually, I was thinking we should celebrate. New family, new life. Let's have dinner out this weekend. Someplace nice. Your choice. The micro-expression that crossed her face was satisfaction, quickly masked. She thought he'd accepted his role, that the investigation had been nothing but paranoid exhaustion. That sounds perfect, she said. Saturday. Saturday, Cole agreed. He had 4 days to prepare. For days to turn the tables on people who'd been running this con for over a decade. 4 days to find out who was really behind this operation and make them all pay for what they'd done to Courtney's brother, to Robert Shun, to James McAllister, to however many other men have been destroyed by this machine. 4 days to become the hunter instead of the prey. As Melissa walked away, humming softly to herself, Cole looked down at the baby in his arms and made a silent promise. Whoever these people were, whatever they'd planned, they'd made one critical mistake. They'd chosen Cole Ewing as their mark, and Cole Ewing never lost. The game was about to change. They just didn't know it yet. Chapter 4. The Investigator. Morris Steele looked exactly like his name. Solid, gray, uncompromising. He sat across from Cole in a dim coffee shop in Mesa, far enough from Phoenix that chance encounters were unlikely. Retired from the Chicago PD 5 years ago, Steele now ran a private investigation firm that specialized in cases the police couldn't or wouldn't touch. Cole had found him through the case files Courtney had sent. The James McAllister investigation, 10 years old, but never closed in Steele's mind. The detective had included personal notes suggesting he'd continued tracking the suspect informally, convinced she was part of a larger criminal enterprise. You're the 4th person to contact me about her, Steele said, stirring his black coffee with mechanical precision. The other 3 are dead. Cole didn't flinch. Suicide? Officially? 2 suicides, 1 accidental overdose. Unofficially, Steele's gray eyes were flat and cold. Murder dressed up nice and legal. These people are professionals, Mr. Ewing. They don't leave evidence. They don't make mistakes. And they have resources that suggest someone with serious money and connections is running the show. Then why are you here? Why risk talking to me? Because I'm old, I'm sick, stage 3 lung cancer, don't bother offering condolences, and I'm tired of watching good men get destroyed while the people responsible walk away clean. Steele leaned forward. McAllister was a friend, a good man. He came to me for help, and I failed him. I've been tracking this operation ever since, off the books on my own time. I have information that could help you. Question is, what are you planning to do with it? Cole considered his answer carefully. Steele had cop written all over him, even retired. The wrong response could end this conversation immediately. I want justice, Cole said. Legal justice if possible. But I'm not naive enough to think the law always works. These people have been operating for over a decade, multiple jurisdictions, and they're still free. So my priority is protecting myself and exposing them. Whatever that takes. Steele studied him for a long moment. You're a lawyer. Appellate attorney, from what I read. Smart, successful, good reputation. You fight clean in court. I fight to win, Cole corrected. Clean or dirty depends on the opponent. Fair enough. Steele pulled a thin folder from his jacket. I'm giving you this because I think you might actually have chance. You're careful, you're intelligent, and most importantly, you're not in love with her anymore. The others were still emotionally compromised. Made them sloppy. Cole accepted the folder, but didn't open it yet. What's in here? Everything I could find on the organization. It's not complete. These people are ghosts, but it's a start. The woman you know as Melissa is just the tip. There are at least 3 other female operatives working the same con in different cities. The man coordinating it is Devin Hood, but he's not the top. He answers to someone else, someone I haven't been able to identify. I know about Hood, Cole said. He came to my house 2 months ago. Steele's eyebrows rose fractionally, the only expression he'd shown. That's further along than I thought. He usually doesn't appear until after the pregnancy is confirmed. They must have accelerated their timeline on you. Why would they do that? Either they're getting bolder, or they think you're an easy mark. Steele's smile was grim. I'm betting on the latter. You were divorced, ready to move on, successful enough to be worth the effort, but not so wealthy you'd have sophisticated security. Perfect target. Cole opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, financial records, interconnected diagrams mapping out the organization's structure. At the center was a blank spot labeled the architect. "That's who we need," Steele said, tapping the blank space. "The person running this whole operation. They're the brains, the money, the protection. Cut off the head and the whole thing collapses." "Any leads on who they might be?" "One, but it's thin." Steele pulled out a single sheet of paper. All the financial transactions eventually route through a series of shell corporations in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. I managed to trace them back to a legal firm in New York, Whitehead and Associates. They specialize in privacy protection for high net worth individuals. I contacted them pretending to be a potential client. Got the runaround for weeks. But I noticed something. Every time I pushed about who owned Sentinel Trust Services, I got transferred to the same person. A lawyer named Wilfred Whitehead. Not just any lawyer, the senior partner. So Whitehead is the architect. Maybe. Or maybe he's just another layer of protection. But here's the interesting part. Whitehead's firm has been around for 30 years. They've represented some seriously sketchy clients over the years. Organized crime figures, corrupt politicians, corporate fraudsters. Always skirting the line, but never quite crossing it. If anyone could design a con this sophisticated and keep it running this long, it'd be someone like him. Cole studied Whitehead's photo, attached to a business profile from a law journal. The man was in his 60s, distinguished looking with white hair and sharp features. He looked like everyone's idea of a trustworthy attorney, which probably meant he was anything but. "I need to make a request," Cole said carefully. "Can you give me more information on Whitehead? Personal details, vulnerabilities, anything that might give me leverage?" "I can try. But Mr. Ewing, understand what you're asking. If Whitehead is running this operation, he has the resources to make problems disappear. You come at him directly, you better not miss." "I won't miss," Cole said with quiet certainty. "But I need to be smart about it. These people think I'm just another mark. I want to keep them thinking that as long as possible." Steele nodded slowly. "How much does your wife suspect?" "Nothing, as far as I can tell. I'm playing the role perfectly. Devoted husband, overwhelmed new father, completely oblivious." "Good. Keep it that way. The moment she realizes you're onto her, she'll activate whatever endgame they have planned. Could be violence, could be legal traps, could be both. These people are ruthless." They talked for another hour, Steele sharing 10 years of accumulated knowledge. By the time they parted ways, Cole had a much clearer picture of what he was facing. The organization had been operating for at least 15 years, possibly longer. They targeted successful but emotionally vulnerable men, usually divorced or recently out of bad relationships. They'd refined their technique over time, learning from mistakes, adapting to new obstacles. The fake pregnancies, the identity changes, the financial infrastructure, it was all designed to maximize profit while minimizing risk. And they'd gotten away with it because their victims either died or were too destroyed to fight back. The ones who survived were bankrupted, broken men with no credibility and no resources. Who would believe them over a tearful pregnant wife claiming abuse? Cole drove home in silence, his mind working through scenarios. He needed more than just knowledge. He needed proof that would stand up in court. He needed to document everything without tipping his hand. And most importantly, he needed to identify the architect, because Steele was right about one thing: cut off the head and the body dies. When he arrived home, Melissa was in the nursery with Michael, singing a lullaby. Her voice was actually quite beautiful. Cole stood in the doorway, watching this woman who'd systematically planned his destruction rock a baby that might not even be his biological child. She looked up and smiled. "He's finally asleep. I think he's starting to recognize us." "Good," Cole said, moving to her side. He put his arm around her shoulders, felt her lean into him. The performance was flawless on both sides. "I was thinking," Melissa said softly, "maybe we should start looking at bigger houses. This place is nice, but with the baby, we'll need more space. And if we want more children." She let the suggestion hang. More children, more anchors, more legal complications to prevent him from leaving or protecting his assets. "Let's wait until we're settled with Michael," Cole said. "One thing at a time." He felt her stiffen slightly, disappointment or annoyance, quickly masked. Of course. You're right. I'm just excited about our future. Our future. The future where she took everything he'd built and left him destroyed like Courtney's brother. Me too, Cole lied, kissing the top of her head. That night, while Melissa slept beside him and Michael's breathing whispered from the bassinet, Cole made a decision. He would dismantle this organization piece by piece. He would expose every crime, every victim, every detail of their operation. He would make sure Devin Hood, Wilfred Whitehead, and especially Melissa paid for every life they destroyed. But he wouldn't do it through the legal system alone. The law was too slow, too easily manipulated by people with resources and connections. No, Cole would fight this battle on multiple fronts: legal, financial, and personal. He'd learned something important in 15 years of appellate work. The most devastating victories weren't the ones where you proved your opponent wrong. They were the ones where you made your opponent destroy themselves. And Cole had just the plan to make that happen. Chapter 5. The Double Agent. Cole found Courtney in the hospital cafeteria 3 days later during her lunch break. She looked up from her salad with fear in her eyes, glancing around as if expecting attackers to materialize. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. "If they see us together." "Relax," Cole said, sitting down. To any observer, they were just former spouses having a civil conversation. "I've been careful. No one followed me. And I swept my car for tracking devices this morning." "You what?" Courtney stared at him. "Cole, what are you?" "I need your help," he said quietly. "And before you say no, hear me out. These people destroyed your brother. They're planning to destroy me. And there are probably dozens of other men out there who've suffered the same fate. We can stop them, but I need someone on the inside. Someone they don't know is working against them." Courtney's hand shook as she put down her fork. "I can't. I'm terrified just talking to you. These people, Cole, you don't understand what they're capable of." Daniel tried to fight back. He documented everything, went to lawyers, filed complaints. And then suddenly his evidence disappeared, witnesses recanted, and he was facing criminal charges for fraud. They flipped his whole case against him. He couldn't take it. The shame, the financial ruin, knowing they'd won. He gave up. "I know," Cole said gently. "And I'm sorry. But Daniel didn't have what we have." "What's that?" "Knowledge, evidence, and most importantly, the element of surprise." He leaned forward. "They think I'm already beaten, Courtney. They think I'm the same as Daniel, as Robert Shun, as all the others. But I'm not. I'm a lawyer who spent 15 years finding loopholes in seemingly airtight cases. I'm a strategist who's made a career out of overturning convictions. And I'm angry. Anger won't protect you from these people. No, but intelligence will. That's why I need you." He pulled out a prepaid phone, one of 6 he'd bought with cash that morning. "I want you to make contact with them." Courtney's eyes widened. "Are you insane? Hear me out. You're Daniel's sister. You have every reason to hate Melissa for what she did to him. If you approach them, maybe through the police, asking for information about your brother's case, it would seem natural, especially if you seemed vulnerable, grief-stricken, maybe drinking too much, making bad decisions." Understanding dawned on Court. Nay's face. "You want me to be bait. I want you to be a Trojan horse. They'll see a wounded family member who might cause problems. Devin Hood might reach out to contain the situation, money, threats, whatever their standard protocol is. And when he does, we'll record everything. Document their methods. Get them on tape making threats or offering bribes. That's entrapment. Entrapment requires a law enforcement officer. You're a civilian, and you have every legal right to record conversations in Arizona. It's a one-party consent state." Cole pushed the phone across the table. "This phone is encrypted and has recording capabilities. All calls are automatically backed up to a secure cloud server. If they contact you, if they threaten you, we'll have proof." Courtney stared at the phone like it might bite her. "And if they don't just threaten? If they decide I'm too dangerous and need to be eliminated like Daniel? Then you contact me immediately and we go to the FBI with everything we have. It's not ideal. I'd rather have more evidence, but it's better than nothing. I won't let you get hurt, Courtney. I promise." "Your promises didn't keep our marriage together," she said bitterly, then immediately looked ashamed. "I'm sorry. That was uncalled for. No, it's fair. I wasn't a good husband. I was too focused on work, on winning, on my own ambitions. I took you for granted. Cole met her eyes. But I never lied to you. I never tried to destroy you. And I'm asking you now to believe that I'll protect you better than I did when we were married. Courtney picked up the phone, turning it over in her hands. What do I actually do? File a request with the Tampa Police Department for your brother's case files. Make it official but emotional. Mention that the anniversary of his death is coming up. You're struggling with closure. You think you might lawyer up and sue Melissa for wrongful death. Make yourself a problem they can't ignore. And when they come, act vulnerable but determined. Let them think they can manipulate you. Record everything. And stay in public places whenever possible. Cole handed her a business card. This is Morris Steele, a retired detective who's been tracking this organization for years. If you feel unsafe at any time, call him. He'll extract you. This is crazy. Yes, Cole agreed. But it's also our best shot. These people are pros, Courtney. They've been doing this for years without getting caught. We need to think like them, anticipate their moves. And that means using their own tactics against them. Courtney was quiet for a long moment. Then, Daniel would want me to do this. He'd want someone to stop them. Then help me stop them. She nodded slowly. Okay, but Cole, when this is over, no matter how it ends, I don't want to see you again. I need a clean break from all of this. From my past, from my mistakes, from everything. Fair enough, Cole said, standing. Thank you, Courtney. For Daniel, and for me. He left without another word, aware that security cameras were tracking his every move. Let them see a civil conversation between exes. Nothing suspicious. Nothing to worry about. The trap was being baited. Now he just needed to spring it at exactly the right moment. The next morning, Cole made a show of working from home, telling Melissa he needed to focus on the Morrison appeal without office distractions. Really, he was monitoring communications from Morris Steele and preparing for phase 2 of his plan. Steele had come through with additional information on Wilfred Whitehead. The lawyer maintained a carefully cultivated public image, charity work, bar association leadership, prestigious clients. But dig deeper and cracks appeared. 3 former associates had left his firm under mysterious circumstances. 2 ex-wives had signed unusually aggressive NDAs. And his financial records, as much as Steele could access, showed irregular patterns consistent with money laundering. More interesting was Whitehead's son, Tobias Whitehead, 41, who'd been disbarred in California 8 years ago for misappropriating client funds. Tobias had spent 2 years in minimum security prison, then disappeared from public records. No employment history, no known residence, no social media presence. But Steele had found him anyway. Tobias was living in Las Vegas under the name Tobias Russo, working as a consultant for high-end casinos. His specialty? Identifying wealthy marks with gambling problems and facilitating their descent into debt. The pattern was unmistakable. Wilfred Whitehead had built a criminal enterprise, and his son was part of the operation. Cole was staring at Tobias's photo when his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Ewing? The voice was smooth, professional male. This is Devin Hood. I believe we met briefly at your home a few months ago. I'm the estate planner who consulted with your wife. Cole's pulse spiked, but his voice stayed calm. I remember. Is there a problem? Not at all. Actually, I was hoping we could schedule a follow-up meeting. Now that your son has arrived, there are some additional considerations for estate planning we should discuss. Asset protection trusts, life insurance policies, that sort of thing. Melissa handles most of that, Cole said carefully. But I suppose we should sit down together at some point. Excellent. How about this Saturday? I'm flying into Phoenix for a few consultations. We could meet at your home, or if you prefer, there's a lovely restaurant downtown, the Compass Room. Very private, excellent for sensitive discussions. The Compass Room was one of Phoenix's most expensive restaurants, the kind of place where power brokers made deals. Hood was signaling his class, his legitimacy, but he was also suggesting neutral territory, which meant he wanted to assess Cole directly away from Melissa's influence. Saturday works, Cole said. The Compass Room sounds perfect. 7 p.m. 7 is ideal. I'll make reservations under my name. Looking forward to our discussion, Mr. Ewing. The line went dead. Cole sat very still, his mind racing. Hood had made contact directly, which meant they were moving to the next phase. But why now? Why push forward so quickly? Unless someone had spooked them. Unless they knew Cole was investigating. Or unless Courtney had already made her move and they were responding. He checked his secure email. Sure enough, there was a message from the prepaid phone he'd given Courtney. Filed a request this morning. Tampa PD responded within 2 hours. Way too fast for normal bureaucracy. They're watching. We'll update if I hear anything. So the organization had monitoring systems in place, tracking requests related to their victims. Sophisticated, expensive, and potentially dangerous. Cole forwarded Courtney's message to Steele with a simple addition. Hood contacted me. Meeting Saturday. Need backup surveillance. Steele's response came within minutes. I'll handle it. Don't go alone. But Cole had no intention of bringing backup to the restaurant. He needed Hood to feel secure, to believe this was just another sheep being led to slaughter. What Hood didn't know was that Cole had already arranged his own surveillance. He'd hired a private security firm, not telling them the full story, just that he needed protection during a sensitive business meeting. They'd have people in the restaurant, cameras recording, and most importantly, armed professionals ready to intervene if things went sideways. Cole didn't plan to let things get that far. But having insurance was never a bad idea. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Chapter 6. The Offer. The Compass Room occupied the top floor of a downtown Phoenix high-rise. All floor-to-ceiling windows and pretentious minimalism. Cole arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in his best suit. Navy Tom Ford, crisp white shirt, silk tie. The uniform of success, of confidence, of a man who belonged in rooms like this. The security detail he'd hired were already in position. 2 at the bar looking like businessmen having after-work drinks. 1 near the elevator posing as a late diner. The 4th was in a surveillance van parked across the street, monitoring video and audio feed from the micro cameras and recording devices Cole wore. Devin Hood arrived exactly on time, a man who clearly valued punctuality as a power move. He was taller than he'd appeared in the security footage, well-dressed, but not flashy, with the kind of face that could blend into any boardroom or country club. They shook hands. Hood's grip was firm, but not aggressive. Thank you for meeting me on short notice, Hood said as they were seated at a corner table with a spectacular view of the city lights. I know new fatherhood is demanding. It has its moments, Cole said easily. Though Melissa is handling most of the heavy lifting. I'm mostly there for moral support and diaper changes. Hood smiled. The traditional division of labor. Very wise to let the mother bond first. Studies show it's crucial for infant development. The waiter appeared. They ordered drinks, scotch for Hood, bourbon for Cole. Then appetizers neither would probably eat. The ritual of expensive dining, establishing status and civility before discussing business. So, Cole said once they were alone, what specific concerns did you want to address? Melissa seemed satisfied with the planning we'd already done. And she should be. Your wife is very thorough. Hood's smile didn't reach his eyes. But there are always additional layers of protection to consider. For instance, have you thought about transferring some assets into an irrevocable trust? It's an excellent way to shield wealth from potential litigation, estate taxes, and other threats. What kind of threats? Oh, the usual. Lawsuits, creditors, business disputes. In your profession, appellate law, you must make enemies. Clients who feel you didn't fight hard enough. Opposing counsel who take things personally. It's surprisingly easy for a successful man to find himself on the wrong end of a frivolous lawsuit. Cole sipped his bourbon, letting the silence stretch. A negotiation tactic. People rush to fill silence, often revealing more than they intended. Hood continued. An irrevocable trust would protect your assets while allowing Melissa and your son to access them if something happened to you. It's really about family security. And who would manage this trust? Sentinel Trust Services, of course. We specialize in these arrangements. Very discreet, very secure. We have clients all over the country who trust us with their most sensitive assets. I'm sure you do, Cole said. But I prefer to keep my assets under direct control. Call it a personality flaw, but I don't like the idea of someone else managing my money. Hood's smile tightened fractionally. I understand the hesitation, but consider this. If you were to become incapacitated or, God forbid, pass away unexpectedly, who would manage your estate? Your wife is wonderful, but does she have the financial expertise to handle complex investments, tax planning, legal compliance? A trust ensures professional management regardless of circumstances. There it was, the hook disguised as concern. Transfer your assets to our control for protection, and when the marriage collapses, we already have legal possession. Clean, efficient, devastating. I appreciate the concern, Cole said, but I have comprehensive insurance, and my firm has established protocols for these situations. I think we're covered. Hood's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Calculation. Reassessment. Of course, he said smoothly. I wouldn't want to pressure you into anything, but perhaps we could discuss life insurance? You have a policy, I assume. Standard term life through my firm. $2 million. That's a start, but hardly sufficient for a man of your means. Your annual income alone is what? $350,000? Plus bonuses and investments. If something happened to you, your family will be financially devastated within years. I'd recommend a minimum of $5 million in coverage, possibly more. And I suppose Sentinel Trust Services offers life insurance. We have partnerships with several excellent carriers. I could have proposals drawn up by Monday. Cole smiled. You're very persistent, Mr. Hood. I'm thorough, Hood corrected. My client's security is my top priority. I've been doing this for 15 years, Mr. Ewing. I've seen too many families destroyed by inadequate planning. I'd hate to see that happen to yours. There was the threat, wrapped in professional concern. Do what we want, or we'll destroy your family anyway. Cole set down his glass. Let me ask you something, Devin. How many of your clients' marriages end in divorce? Hood blinked. I'm not sure I understand the question. It's simple. You specialize in asset protection for married men. I'm wondering what percentage of those men end up divorced within a few years of setting up their trusts. I don't track that specific metric, but because I've been doing some research, Cole continued, his voice still friendly but colder now. And I've noticed a pattern. Men who use Sentinel Trust Services seem to have an unusually high divorce rate, almost like the trusts themselves create marital problems. Hood's face was perfectly neutral, but his eyes had gone flat and dangerous. That's an interesting theory, but correlation doesn't imply causation. Men who seek asset protection often have complex situations that, like Daniel Osborne, Cole said quietly. The name hit Hood like a physical blow. For just a second, his mask slipped. Surprise, anger, calculation racing across his features before control reasserted itself. I don't know who that is, Hood said. Really? Because Daniel Osborne used your services 5 years ago in Tampa. Set up an irrevocable trust right after his wife got pregnant. Then she filed for divorce, took everything, and Daniel killed himself. You don't remember him? Hood stood abruptly. I think this meeting is over. Sit down, Devin. The command in Cole's voice froze Hood mid-step. Cole hadn't raised his voice, hadn't moved, but suddenly the dynamic in the room had shifted. The sheep had become a wolf. You're going to sit down, Cole continued calmly, and you're going to listen very carefully, because I'm about to make you an offer that will determine whether you spend the next 20 years in federal prison or walk away from this conversation a free man. Hood stood frozen for 3 heartbeats. Then, slowly he sat. You're recording this, Hood said flatly. Obviously, video and audio uploaded in real time to secure servers, plus witnesses scattered throughout this restaurant. So let's skip the denials and threats. I know what you are. I know what you do. I know about the organization you work for. And most importantly, I know you're not the one running it. I don't know what you're talking about. Wilford Whitehead, Cole said. Senior partner at Whitehead and Associates in New York. That's who you answer to, isn't it? He's the architect. You're just the facilitator. Hood's expression remained neutral, but his hands had tightened on the table edge, knuckles white. Cole leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything about the organization, how it works, who's involved, how many victims there are. You're going to provide evidence, documents, communications, financial records. Everything. And if I refuse, then I go to the FBI with what I already have. It's not enough to convict Whitehead, but it's more than enough to destroy you. Conspiracy to commit fraud, witness intimidation, possibly accessory to murder if I can prove you were involved in Daniel Osborne's death. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison. You have nothing, Hood said, but his voice lacked conviction. I have Daniel Osborne's widow, my ex-wife's sister-in-law. I have her testimony about how you targeted her husband, how the money moved, how Daniel was driven to suicide. I have financial records showing the pattern of asset transfers. I have security footage of you meeting with my wife to plan my destruction. And most importantly, I have this conversation where you didn't deny a single thing I accused you of. Hood was silent, his mind clearly racing through options. But here's the thing, Cole continued. I don't actually want you, Devin. You're a facilitator, a tool. The person I want is Whitehead, and you're going to help me get him. Why would I do that? Because I'm offering you immunity, full cooperation with federal prosecutors, witness protection if needed, and a chance to walk away from this instead of dying in prison. All you have to do is turn on your boss. Whitehead will kill me. Whitehead will be too busy defending himself to come after you. I'm going to destroy him, Devin. Completely and utterly. I'm going to expose every crime, every victim, every dollar he's stolen. I'm going to make sure he spends the rest of his life in a cage. The only question is whether you're standing beside him or testifying against him. Hood stared at Cole for a long moment. You're not what we thought you were. No, Cole agreed. I'm not. But you people made a critical error. You targeted a lawyer who spent his entire career finding ways to overturn seemingly unbeatable cases. Did you really think I wouldn't figure this out? Melissa said you were. Broken? Vulnerable? Easy. Cole's smile was cold. That's what I wanted her to think. Every step of this relationship, I was documenting and verifying. When your operation started moving too fast, I knew something was wrong. And once my ex-wife warned me, I had everything I needed to start building my case. Does Melissa know? Not yet. And she won't until I'm ready to spring the trap. Right now, she thinks she's still running the con. Let her keep thinking that. Hood was quiet again, clearly weighing his options. Finally, if I cooperate, I want full immunity. And protection. Whitehead has reach. You'll get it. But I need everything, Devin. Names, dates, financial records, recordings if you have them. I need enough evidence to bury Whitehead so deep he never sees daylight again. I can do that, Hood said slowly. But understand something. Whitehead isn't just running a con. He's connected, political connections, law enforcement connections, money connections. Even with evidence, taking him down won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is, Cole said. He pulled out a business card, his real one, from his law firm. You have 48 hours to decide. Call me, and we'll arrange a meeting with federal prosecutors. Don't call me, and I turn everything over to the FBI and let them sort it out. Your choice. He stood, dropped $300 bills on the table, more than enough to cover the meal they hadn't eaten, and walked out without looking back. Behind him, Devin Hood sat frozen, staring at the business card, the weight of his decision pressing down like a physical thing. Cole didn't wait for the elevator. He took the stairs, adrenaline pumping, mind sharp and clear. The first domino had fallen. Now he just needed to topple the rest before they realized what was happening. His phone buzzed. A text from a surveillance team. Multiple people photographed Hood during a meeting. They may have backup outside. Recommend alternative exit. Cole texted back, stay with Hood. I want to know where he goes and who he contacts. He exited through the kitchen. A hefty tip to the manager bought his discretion and caught an Uber 3 blocks away. The driver didn't ask why a man in a $3,000 suit was climbing into his Honda Civic from a back alley. By the time Cole got home, it was past 11. Melissa was in bed, reading on her phone. Michael slept peacefully in his bassinet. How was dinner? She asked, looking up with a smile that would have fooled anyone who didn't know better. Productive, Cole said, loosening his tie. Devin Hood sends his regards. We discussed some additional planning for Michael's future. That's wonderful, Melissa said. I've been telling you we need better estate protection. You have, Cole agreed. He kissed her forehead, another performance in their ongoing play. I'm going to shower and then check some case files. Don't wait up. In the shower, with water pounding and white noise covering any potential listening devices, Cole allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The trap was set. He would either take the deal or try to run. Either way, Cole would be ready. And when it was all over, when every person involved in this criminal enterprise was exposed and punished, Cole would make sure Melissa understood exactly what she'd lost by choosing him as her target. He wasn't prey. He was a predator who'd been patiently waiting for his enemies to reveal themselves. And now the hunt was truly beginning. Chapter 7. The Collapse. Devin Hood called 36 hours later, his voice tight with fear. I'm in, but we need to move fast. Whitehead suspects something. He's been calling me constantly, asking about our meeting. I think he has someone watching me. Cole was in his office, door locked, secure line active. Where are you now? A hotel in Tempe. I checked in under a false name. But I don't know how long I have before a sound in the background, something crashing. Hood's breathing became rapid. Shit, someone's at the door. There. The line went dead. Cole immediately called Morris Steele. Hood's location now. He's at a hotel in Tempe, but someone just... I'm already on it, Steele interrupted. I had a tracker on his phone, sending you the address. He's at the Desert Star Inn, room 237. I'm 15 minutes out. If you're going, move now. Cole was already grabbing his keys. I'm not letting them eliminate our only witness. He made it to the Desert Star Inn in 12 minutes, breaking every traffic law. The motel was low rent, the kind of place where no one asked questions and cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. Hood's rental car was still in the lot, but the door to room 237 stood open. Cole approached carefully, using skills he'd learned his father's military household. Slow, methodical, aware of his surroundings. The room had been tossed. Lamp broken, mattress overturned, Hood's luggage emptied across the floor. And in the bathroom, Devin Hood lay unconscious, alive, but badly beaten, blood pooling from a head wound. Cole checked for a pulse. Strong and steady. Hood groaned, his eyes fluttering. Stay still, Cole said, pulling out his phone to call 911. But Hood's hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. No police, Hood rasped. Whitehead has people inside. Phoenix PD. They'll finish what they started. You need medical attention. I need protection. Hood's eyes focused, sharp despite the beating. I was stupid. Told my assistant about our meeting. She must have reported to Whitehead. They came to silence me. But I got the files out first. What files? Everything. Names, victims, financial records, recordings. It's all in a storage unit. Hood rattled off an address. Unit 347. Combination is 8-4-7-2. Get it before they do. Morris Steele appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with a cop's practiced eye. Damn, they moved faster than I expected. Between them, they got Hood to Steele's car and to a private clinic Steele knew, a place that treated police informants and witnesses who couldn't risk official hospitals. The doctor there was discreet and asked no questions. While Hood was being patched up, Cole and Steele drove to the storage facility. It was after midnight, the place deserted except for security lights and cameras. Cole had no doubt those cameras were being monitored, but he didn't care anymore. Hood's beating had changed the calculation. This was no longer about careful planning. It was about moving faster than Whitehead could respond. Unit 347 was in the back corner, climate-controlled and expensive. Cole entered the combination Hood had given him. The lock clicked open. Inside were 4 filing boxes and a laptop. Cole grabbed the laptop while Steele loaded the boxes into his trunk. They were back on the road within 3 minutes. We need somewhere secure, Steele said. Whitehead knows about your house, my office, probably anywhere else we might normally go. I know a place, Cole said. He directed Steele to a law office in Scottsdale, belonging to Benjamin Young, a colleague from Cole's firm who specialized in criminal defense. Young was a close friend, and more importantly, he had a SC Chef, a sensitive compartmented information facility, built into his office for handling classified government contracts. It was one of the most secure locations in Phoenix outside of federal buildings. Young met them at 2 a.m. asking no questions when Cole explained they needed the SCAF for a few hours. Within 15 minutes, they were sealed inside a room specifically designed to prevent any electronic surveillance. Cole opened Hood's laptop. No password. He'd clearly prepared it for exactly this scenario. The files were organized with meticulous care. Spreadsheets tracking every victim over 15 years. Audio recordings of Hood's conversations with Whitehead. Financial records showing exactly how money moved through the Shell Corporation network. And most damning of all, contracts. Actual written contracts between Whitehead and Associates and the female operatives, laying out terms of employment, performance bonuses based on asset acquisition, and liability waivers. It was staggering in its audacity. A criminal enterprise run like a legitimate business, complete with HR policies and employment agreements. This is enough, Steele said, scrolling through files. This is more than enough to bury Whitehead and everyone else involved. There's more, Cole said, opening a folder labeled Insurance. Inside were videos, security footage from various locations showing the female operatives with different men, discussing strategies, even laughing about their marks. One video showed Melissa at what appeared to be a training session, listening to Wilfred Whitehead himself explain the psychological technique for building trust and manipulating targets. Cole watched himself being dissected as a case study. Whitehead's voice, cultured and clinical. Cole Ewing represents an ideal Mark profile. Divorced, successful, emotionally guarded, but craving connection. His need for control makes him predictable. Appeal to his protective instincts, show vulnerability, let him feel like he's saving you. Men like this always fall the hardest because they think they're too smart to be fooled. The casual cruelty of it, the calculated manipulation, made Cole's blood run cold. But he kept watching, documenting everything. By 4 a.m., they had a complete picture of the organization. 17 female operatives working in 8 states. 43 confirmed victims over 15 years. Estimated total theft exceeding $50 million. And at least 4 probable murders disguised as suicides. "We take this to the FBI," Steele said. "Not yet," Cole said. "This evidence gets Whitehead. But I want everyone, every operative, every facilitator, every corrupt cop or lawyer who helped them. If we move too fast, some of them will slip through the cracks. So what do you want to do? I want to use myself as bait one more time. Let them think they've still got the upper hand. Let them make one final move to silence me and Hood. And when they do, we'll have them all." That's incredibly dangerous. "Yes," Cole agreed. "But it's the only way to be sure we get everyone." He pulled out his phone and sent a text to a number he'd memorized but never called. Melissa's burner phone, the one she didn't know he discovered hidden in her purse. The text was simple. "I know everything. Meet me at the house at noon today. Come alone, or I release the files." He didn't expect her to come alone. He didn't expect her to negotiate. He expected her to panic, to contact Whitehead, to trigger whatever endgame protocol they had for situations like this. And when they came for him with everything they had, the FBI would be waiting. Cole had spent the morning preparing. Every room in the house now had cameras and recording equipment installed by a team Steele had brought in. Not cops, but retired federal agents who specialized in witness protection and sting operations. They'd wired the entire property for sound and video, with live feeds going to multiple secure locations and directly to an FBI task force that Steele had finally contacted. The FBI had been surprisingly eager to help once they saw Hood's evidence. Apparently, Whitehead had been on their radar for years, but they'd never been able to gather sufficient proof. Now, they had everything, and a chance to catch him in the act of witness intimidation or worse. Special Agent Lilia Francis was running the operation, a 20-year veteran of the Bureau's white-collar crime division. She sat in the surveillance van outside Cole's house, coordinating with teams positioned around the neighborhood. "Mr. Ewing," she'd said when they met that morning, her dark eyes serious, "I need to be very clear about the risks. If Whitehead feels cornered, he may order your elimination. We'll have agents close by, but response time is never zero. Are you certain you want to do this?" "I'm certain," Cole had said. "These people destroyed lives. They need to answer for it." Now it was 11:45 a.m., and Cole sat in his living room with Michael sleeping in his arms. Melissa had left early that morning, claiming she needed to do some shopping. She'd been tense, distracted, clearly receiving updates about Devin Hood's disappearance and the missing files. At 11:55, a car pulled into the driveway. Not Melissa's BMW, but a black Lincoln Town car with tinted windows. Professional, expensive, intimidating. 3 people got out. Melissa, looking pale and frightened. Devin Hood, conscious now but clearly still injured, moving stiffly. And a third person Cole had only seen in photographs, Wilfred Whitehead himself. The architect had come to handle the situation personally. Cole carefully placed Michael in his playpen, making sure the baby was out of any potential line of fire, then walked to the front door and opened it before they could knock. "Wilfred Whitehead," he said calmly. "I wasn't expecting you to make a personal appearance." Whitehead was exactly as imposing as his reputation suggested. 6 feet tall, perfectly tailored suit, silver hair immaculate, eyes cold and calculating. When he spoke, his voice was cultured, almost grandfatherly. "Mr. Ewing, may we come in? I believe we have some matters to discuss." By all means, Cole stepped aside, letting them enter. Melissa wouldn't meet his eyes. It looked like he wanted to bolt, but didn't dare. They settled in the living room. Whitehead in Cole's favorite chair, Melissa on the couch, Hood standing nervously by the door. Cole remained standing, maintaining the strategic advantage of movement. "You've made things very complicated, Mr. Ewing," Whitehead said. "I'll admit, I underestimated you. That doesn't happen often. I'll take that as a compliment. It's not intended as one. You've stolen property that belongs to me. Files, recordings, confidential business documents. I'm here to negotiate their return." "Negotiate?" Cole let skepticism color his voice. "With what leverage? I have everything I need to destroy your organization. Names, faces, victims, financial records. The FBI could roll up your entire operation by dinner time." "Perhaps," Whitehead conceded, "but you haven't gone to them yet, which tells me you're willing to make a deal." "I wouldn't call it a deal." "Then what would you call it?" Cole smiled coldly. "Complete surrender. You shut down your operation permanently. All 17 of your operatives cease activities immediately. You return every dollar stolen from your victims, all 50 million plus. You turn yourself into federal authorities and confess to every crime. And I don't press charges for attempted murder against Devin Hood." Whitehead actually laughed. "You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. You're asking me to destroy everything I've built, bankrupt myself, and spend the rest of my life in prison. In exchange for what exactly? Not pressing charges I could easily fight. In exchange for me not releasing the files publicly before the FBI arrests you. The way I see it, you have 2 options. Option 1, surrender now, cooperate with federal prosecutors, and maybe negotiate a reduced sentence. Option 2, I release everything to the media. Your name becomes synonymous with fraud and murder. Your family legacy is destroyed, and you go to prison anyway, but with 0 leverage. You're bluffing. You won't release those files. It would compromise any federal case against me." "Maybe," Cole said, "or maybe I care more about justice than legal procedure. Maybe I want every person who's suffered because of you to know who you are and what you did. Maybe I want your grandchildren to grow up knowing their grandfather was a monster who drove men to suicide for profit." Something flickered in Whitehead's eyes, fear, or perhaps rage. "You're making a serious mistake, young man. The mistake was yours. You targeted me thinking I was just another broken divorce man looking for love. You didn't do your homework. I'm an appellate attorney who's made a career out of finding weaknesses in seemingly perfect cases. Did you really think I wouldn't find yours?" Whitehead stood slowly. "I came here to offer you money. A substantial amount, enough to solve any financial problems you might have. I'm prepared to write you a check for $5 million right now if you return the files and forget this ever happened." "I don't want your money. Everyone wants money, Mr. Ewing. Not everyone. Some people want justice." Whitehead's mask finally slipped. The grandfatherly charm vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have connections you can't imagine, political connections, law enforcement connections. I could have you disbarred, discredited, destroyed. One phone call, and your entire career evaporates. Go ahead and make that call, Cole said. I've already submitted my resignation to the firm. As of this morning, I'm no longer practicing law, which means there's nothing you can take from me and no bar association you can threaten me with. This clearly surprised Whitehead. You're willing to give up your career over this? I'm willing to give up everything to make sure men like you don't destroy anyone else. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Whitehead nodded slowly. I see. You've made your choice. Unfortunately, that means I have to make mine. He pulled out his phone. Cole tensed, expecting him to call someone, backup, an enforcer, a corrupt cop. Instead, Whitehead opened an app and pressed a button. Nothing happened. Whitehead frowned, pressed it again. Still nothing. Looking for your security team? Special Agent Francis's voice came from the doorway. She stood there with her badge held high. 3 other FBI agents behind her with weapons drawn. They're currently being detained by my colleagues, as are the 2 vehicles you positioned 3 blocks away as backup, as is your son Tobias in Las Vegas, and 3 of your female operatives in different cities. This operation is over, Mr. Whitehead. Whitehead's face went gray. He looked at Cole with something approaching respect. You weren't negotiating. This whole conversation was. Evidence, Cole confirmed. Everything you just said was recorded and witnessed by federal agents. Attempted bribery, witness intimidation, conspiracy to obstruct justice. And that's just from the last 10 minutes. We haven't even gotten to the fraud, theft, and accessory to murder charges yet. FBI agents moved into the room. Whitehead didn't resist as they cuffed him, reading him his Miranda rights. Melissa burst into tears, collapsing on the couch. Devin Hood just looked relieved. As they led Whitehead out, he turned back to Cole one final time. You haven't won. My lawyers will tear your evidence apart. I'll be out in a year, and then... Cole said, because Devin Hood isn't your only cooperating witness. While you were busy trying to intimidate me, Morris Steele was interviewing 3 of your former operatives who were happy to testify in exchange for immunity. And the FBI has been monitoring your communications for the past 24 hours. We know about the offshore accounts. We know about the murdered witnesses. We know everything. Whitehead's face went from gray to white. He said nothing else as they took him away. Agent Francis approached Cole. That was reckless, Mr. Ewing. If he'd had a weapon, if his backup had gotten through. But they didn't, because you were prepared and because I trusted the system to work when given proper evidence. Still, you took an enormous risk. Some things are worth the risk, Cole said. He looked at Melissa, who was being cuffed now, still crying. How many charges? For her? Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, witness intimidation. Probably 15 to 20 years if convicted. The others will face similar charges based on their level of involvement. Cole felt nothing looking at her. No anger, no satisfaction, not even pity. She was just another criminal who'd made bad choices and would now face consequences. And the victims? He asked. We're contacting all of them. The recovered funds will be distributed proportionally, though it won't be everything they lost. Asset forfeiture laws are complicated. What about Daniel Osborne's family? They'll be included in the restitution. I understand his sister works at Phoenix General. She does. We'll reach out to her. Make sure she knows her brother didn't die in vain. That his death led to justice for dozens of other victims. Agent Francis paused. Can I ask you something, Mr. Ewing? When did you actually figure it out? What did you know your wife was running a con? Cole thought about it. The first moment I met her, something felt too perfect, too calculated. I ignored it because I wanted to believe in second chances. But deep down, I think I always knew something was wrong. I just needed proof before I could act. That's one hell of an instinct. It's not instinct. It's experience. I've spent 15 years watching people lie under oath, construct false narratives, manipulate juries. You learn to see the tells. Melissa was good, maybe the best I've ever seen, but she wasn't perfect. Nobody is. The FBI spent another 3 hours processing the scene, taking statements, securing evidence. When they finally left, Cole was alone in his house with Michael, who'd slept through the entire takedown. He looked at his son, because whatever else was true, this was his son now, genetically or not, and made a promise. I'm going to be better, he said softly. Better than my father was, better than I was in my first marriage. I'm going to show you that integrity matters, that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Michael yawned and grabbed Cole's finger, holding tight with impossible strength. Cole's phone buzzed. A text from Courtney. I heard. Thank you. For Daniel. And for all of them. I can finally let him go now. He typed back. Thank you for the warning. Without you, none of this would have happened. Her response came quickly. Take care of yourself, Cole. And that baby. Be the man I always wanted you to be. He would. Not for her. Not for anyone else, but for himself. And for Michael. Because in the end, that's what this had all been about. Not revenge, not justice, but the simple principle that some things were worth fighting for. Worth risking everything for. And Cole Ewing had proven he was willing to pay that price. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The trial of Wilfred Whitehead became a media sensation. For 3 months, Phoenix was transfixed by testimony detailing the elaborate criminal enterprise he'd run for over 15 years. Each day brought new revelations. More victims, more money, more evidence of systematic psychological manipulation and fraud. Cole attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery where Whitehead couldn't avoid seeing him. It wasn't gloating. Cole had never been one for petty victories. It was a reminder that his victims were real people, not statistics or profit margins. The prosecution's case was devastating. Devin Hood testified for 4 days, laying out the organization's structure with meticulous detail. 3 of the female operatives followed, each describing how Whitehead had recruited them. Usually women with troubled pasts, buried secrets, desperate for money, and willing to cross ethical lines. Melissa testified under immunity, her voice shaking as she explained how she'd been recruited 8 years ago after a bankruptcy and failed marriage left her vulnerable. Whitehead had promised her financial security and a fresh start. All she had to do was play a role, seduce lonely men, gather their financial information, and disappear when the divorce was finalized. She'd been told the men were wealthy and wouldn't really suffer. She told herself she was just leveling an unfair playing field. When did you realize you were destroying people's lives? The prosecutor asked. I always knew, Melissa said, tears streaming. I just didn't let myself think about it. It was easier to see them as marks, as targets, than as human beings. Daniel Osborne was the first one who, her voice broke. He begged me not to leave. Told me he'd do anything, change anything. And I just walked away. 3 weeks later, he was dead. I knew it was my fault, but I kept going because I didn't know how to stop. The jury listened with stony faces. But the most damning testimony came from Morris Steele. The retired detective had spent years documenting the organization's activities, following leads the police had ignored. He presented a timeline showing 43 victims, estimated damages exceeding $60 million, higher than Hood's estimate, and 4 deaths that deserved to be investigated as potential homicides. When asked why he'd pursued the case so aggressively, Steele's answer was simple. Because James McAllister was my friend. Because he came to me for help, and I failed him. Because I couldn't live with myself if I let these people keep destroying lives. The defense tried to paint Whitehead as merely a lawyer who'd provided legal services to clients, with no knowledge of how they intended to use those services. It was a laughable strategy given the mountain of evidence, including recorded phone calls where Whitehead explicitly discussed targeting marks and strategies for maximizing asset extraction. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict was unanimous on all charges: fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, witness intimidation, and accessory to the death of Daniel Osborne. The judge sentenced him to 40 years in federal prison. At 72, it was effectively a life sentence. As they let him away, Whitehead looked at Cole one final time. His expression held no remorse, only cold calculation. Even in defeat, still looking for an angle, an appeal, a way out. There wouldn't be one. Cole had made sure of it. Melissa received 12 years, lighter than she might have, due to her cooperation and genuine remorse. Devin Hood got 5 years in a minimum security facility plus permanent probation. The female operatives received sentences ranging from 3 to 10 years, depending on their level of involvement and cooperation. Tobias Whitehead, the disbarred son who'd served as a recruiter, got 15 years. 3 corrupt police officers who'd taken bribes to suppress investigations received prison time and lost their badges. A federal prosecutor who'd been on Whitehead's payroll was disbarred and sentenced to 8 years. The entire rotten structure collapsed, exactly as Cole had intended. But the real victory came 2 months after the trial ended, when the FBI announced they'd recovered and returned almost $40 million to Whitehead's victims. It wasn't everything, but it was substantial, enough to rebuild lives, pay off debts, start over. Cole donated his portion to a victims' advocacy fund. He didn't need the money. He had something far more valuable. Michael, who was growing rapidly and developing a personality that suggested he'd inherited Cole's stubborn determination. DNA tests had come back during the trial. Michael was not biologically Cole's son. Melissa had used donor sperm exactly as Courtney had warned. But Cole didn't care. He'd filed for full custody and won easily. As far as he was concerned, biology was irrelevant. Michael was his son in every way that mattered. On a warm Saturday morning in October, Cole took Michael to a park in Arcadia. At 7 months old, the baby was fascinated by everything: trees, birds, other children playing. Cole sat on a bench, holding Michael on his lap, watching the world move around them. "Cole, He looked up to see Courtney standing there, looking healthier than she had in years. She'd gained weight, which suited her, and some of the haunted look had left her eyes. "Courtney, this is a surprise. I've been meaning to reach out." She sat down beside him, not touching but close. "I wanted to thank you. Again. Properly. What you did, taking down Whitehead, exposing the whole operation, it gave me closure. I can finally let Daniel go. I'm glad." Cole meant it. "You okay?" "I am. Therapy helps. So does the restitution money. It won't bring my brother back, but it'll pay for my nursing degree, help me start over." She smiled at Michael. "He's beautiful. Thank you. You're keeping him?" "Even though he's my son," Cole said firmly. "The circumstances of his birth don't change that." Courtney nodded. "You're a good man, Cole. Better than I gave you credit for when we were married. I'm sorry I didn't see it then. We were both young and stupid. Different people now. Very different." She stood. "I should go. I just wanted to say thank you and goodbye. Properly this time. Goodbye, Courtney. I hope you find what you're looking for." "You too." She walked away without looking back, and Cole was glad. They'd both moved on. The past was the past. His phone rang. Benjamin Young, his friend and colleague from the firm. "Cole, how's retirement treating you?" "It's not retirement. Just a career change." Cole had been working with a nonprofit that provided legal services to fraud victims. The pay was terrible, but the work was meaningful. "Well, when you're ready to come back to real law, we've got a corner office with your name on it. The Morrison appeal set precedent in the Ninth Circuit. You're a legend here." "I appreciate that, Benjamin, but I'm happy where I am." "Fair enough. Hey, I'm calling because there's someone who wants to meet you. Heidi Murray. She's a journalist working on a book about the Whitehead case. She'd like to interview you about the investigation." Cole hesitated. He'd avoided media attention throughout the trial, letting the prosecutors and FBI take the credit. But maybe sharing his story could help others recognize similar cons before it was too late. "Tell her I'll do it, but only if she agrees to focus on the victims, not on me." "I'll let her know. Take care, Cole." Cole hung up and looked at Michael, who'd fallen asleep against his shoulder. The baby's face was peaceful, trusting. Cole felt a fierce surge of protective love. Whatever came next, interviews, appeals, attempts by Whitehead's remaining allies to discredit the conviction, Cole would face it. Because that's what you did when you stood for something. You didn't give up when things got hard. You didn't compromise your principles for convenience. You fought, even when the fight seemed impossible. Especially then, as the afternoon sun filtered through the trees and Michael slept peacefully in his arms, Cole Ewing felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Genuine contentment. Not happiness. That was too simple, too fleeting. But contentment. The knowledge that he'd done the right thing, that he'd stood up when it mattered, that he'd protected people who couldn't protect themselves. It was enough. More than enough. Chapter 9. The New Beginning. 6 months after the trial, Cole Ewing stood in the office of the nonprofit legal clinic he now directed. The space was modest, a converted warehouse in South Phoenix, nothing like the prestigious downtown offices of his former firm. But the work was more meaningful than any corporate appeal he'd ever argued. The clinic specialized in helping fraud victims navigate the complex legal system, people who'd lost money to scams, identity theft, or sophisticated cons like Whitehead's operation. Cole had assembled a small team of lawyers and paralegals, all of whom shared his commitment to justice over profit. Mr. Ewing? His assistant, Mary Pruitt, knocked on the open door. There's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Send them in. A man in his 50s entered, dressed in worn jeans and a faded jacket. His face was lined with stress, his eyes haunted in a way Cole recognized immediately. The look of someone who'd been targeted and was only beginning to understand the scope of their victimization. Mr. Ewing, my name is Jerome Green. I don't know where else to turn. His voice cracked. 3 months ago, I married a woman I met online. She was perfect, too perfect I see now. She moved into my house, got pregnant, and 2 weeks ago, I found out she'd been transferring money from my accounts. When I confronted her, she disappeared. All my savings gone. And now I'm getting calls from her lawyer threatening to sue me for domestic violence and child support if I go to the police. Cole gestured to a chair. Sit down, Jerome. Tell me everything. As Green talked, Cole listened with growing recognition. The pattern was identical to Whitehead's operation, right down to the pregnant wife and threatening lawyer, which meant either someone was copying the playbook or there were still operatives Whitehead had trained who were still active. I thought I was going crazy, Green said. Nobody believes me. The police say it's a civil matter. My family thinks I'm paranoid. But then I read about the Whitehead trial, and everything clicked. This is the same thing, isn't it? It might be, Cole said carefully. Do you have any documentation? Bank statements, text messages, photos. Some. Green pulled out a folder. I started documenting as soon as I got suspicious. My ex-wife works in banking. She's the one who noticed the irregular transfers and warned me. Cole spent 2 hours going through Green's evidence. The pattern was unmistakable. This wasn't a copy. It was a continuation. Someone had picked up where Whitehead left off. After Green left with a plan and hope in his eyes, Cole immediately called Morris Steele. We've got a problem, Cole said. The operation is still running. That's impossible. We locked up everyone involved. Not everyone. There must have been operatives we didn't know about, or someone new took over the infrastructure. I just interviewed a victim with a nearly identical story to mine. Send me the file. I'll start digging. But Cole was already ahead of him, pulling up the evidence Green had left. He examined the lawyer's letterhead. The firm was called Bennett & Associates, based in Houston. A quick search showed it was a legitimate firm, but the attorney who'd signed the threatening letter, D'Angelo Duran, wasn't listed on their website. Cole dug deeper, using the investigative skills he'd honed over the past year. D'Angelo Duran had been a paralegal at Whitehead & Associates until 5 years ago. He'd left under mysterious circumstances around the same time Tobias Whitehead had been disbarred. And when Cole ran a facial recognition search on the photos Green had provided of his wife, he got a hit. Lindsay Faulkner, one of the female operatives who'd managed to avoid prosecution by disappearing before the FBI raids. She'd been on a watch list, but apparently had resurfaced with a new target. They're not just continuing the operation, Cole said to Steele when he called back. They're expanding it. Someone must have salvaged Whitehead's client list and started rebuilding. Who would be crazy enough to do that? Someone who thinks they're smarter than Whitehead. Someone who learned from his mistakes. Cole's mind raced through possibilities. Or someone who's been doing this even longer than we knew, and Whitehead was just one branch of a larger organization. The implications were staggering. What if the operation they'd exposed was just one cell in a national network? What if there were multiple Whiteheads running similar cons in different regions? We need to contact the FBI, Steele said. If this is bigger than we thought. Already on it. Cole was composing an email to Special Agent Francis as they spoke. But this time, I'm not waiting for the system to catch up. If there are more victims out there, more people about to be targeted, we need to move faster. Over the next 2 weeks, Cole worked with Francis and the FBI to identify a pattern. Jerome Green wasn't the only recent victim. There were at least 6 other men in different states, Arizona, Texas, California, Florida, who'd reported similar experiences. The operation was more geographically dispersed than Whitehead's had been, which made it harder to track, but also suggested more resources and sophistication. The common thread was Lindsay Faulkner. She appeared in 3 of the cases, each time under a different name, which meant she wasn't just an operative anymore. She was coordinating multiple cons simultaneously. She learned from Whitehead's mistakes, Cole said during a strategy session with Francis and Steele. She's not using a central legal firm. She's working with local lawyers in each jurisdiction, making it harder to trace the pattern. And she's moving faster, marriage to divorce in under 6 months, which limits documentation and makes victims less likely to fight back. So how we stop her? Francis asked. Cole thought for a moment, then smiled. We use the same tactic I used against Whitehead. We make her think she's won. The plan was simple, but required perfect execution. Jerome Green would reach out to Lindsay, now calling herself Laura Frazier, and offer settlement. Big money, enough to tempt her into a face-to-face meeting. The FBI would wire the meeting, and when she arrived with D'Angelo Duran or whoever else was working with her, they'd be arrested on multiple charges. But Cole had a secondary plan that he didn't share with the FBI, because arresting Lindsay wasn't enough. He wanted the person who'd taken over for Whitehead, the new architect. While Green was setting up the meeting, Cole traced the financial trail. The money Lindsay stole wasn't disappearing into offshore accounts anymore. Those had been compromised during the Whitehead investigation. Instead, it was moving through cryptocurrency exchanges and emerging in legitimate businesses. One business in particular caught Cole's attention, a chain of relationship coaching centers called New Beginnings, based in Nevada. The company claimed to help divorced individuals rebuild their lives and find authentic connections. But when Cole examined the ownership structure, he found something interesting. The CEO was Roseanne Fritz, a licensed therapist who'd been sued twice for ethics violations related to client exploitation. More interesting, Fritz had a connection to Wilfred Whitehead. She'd served as an expert witness in 2 of his cases, both times testifying about the emotional vulnerability of divorced individuals. That's her, Cole said, showing Steele the evidence. She's the new architect. The relationship coaching centers are how she's recruiting operatives and identifying marks. Vulnerable people come in for help, and she either recruits them as operatives or flags them as potential targets. That's genius, Steele admitted grudgingly, and nearly impossible to prove. But not impossible. Cole pulled up New Beginnings' client database, which he'd accessed through means he preferred not to discuss with law enforcement. Look at these names. At least 20 of them match known victims or operatives from the Whitehead case. This isn't a coincidence. Fritz has been running the operation all along. Whitehead was just her East Coast division. She's the real mastermind. Getting evidence that would stand up in court required more work. Cole sent in an undercover operative, a private investigator posing as a recently divorced man looking for help. The investigator wore a wire and documented 3 sessions where Fritz subtly probed about his financial situation, assets, and emotional vulnerabilities. Then she introduced him to a relationship coach who could help him open his heart again, Lindsay Faulkner. The FBI moved on New Beginnings 2 days before Jerome Green's scheduled meeting with Lindsay. The raid uncovered everything: databases of potential marks, training materials for operatives, financial records showing millions in stolen assets flowing through Fritz's businesses, and recorded therapy sessions where Fritz actively coached operatives on psychological manipulation techniques. Roseanne Fritz was arrested along with Lindsay Faulkner, D'Angelo Duran, and 4 other operatives working in different states. The FBI recovered client files showing the operation had been active for at least 20 years, predating even Whitehead's involvement. How did you figure out? Francis asked Cole afterward. Pattern recognition, Cole said. Whitehead was too sophisticated to have built the operation alone. Someone with deep psychological knowledge had designed the manipulation protocols. Someone with business acumen had created the financial infrastructure. Someone who'd been doing this long enough to refine it into an almost perfect system. Fritz fit the profile. The trial was faster this time. Fritz's defense crumbled in the face of overwhelming evidence, and her lawyers convinced her to take a plea deal. 30 years with no possibility of parole. Lindsay Faulkner and the other operatives received sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years. The FBI's Victim Services Division identified over 60 additional victims from Fritz's operation, recovering almost $70 million in assets. It was the largest marriage fraud case in federal history. Cole stood in the courtroom as the final sentences were read, Jerome Green beside him. The man who'd walked into his office 6 months ago, broken and desperate, now stood tall, his faith in justice restored. "Thank you," Green said quietly, "for believing me, for fighting for me." "That's what we do," Cole said. "We fight." 1 year later, Cole Ewing stood in front of a congressional committee, testifying about the need for stronger federal laws against marriage fraud and romance scams. Michael, now 2 years old, sat in the gallery with Cole's mother, a woman who'd flown in from North Carolina specifically to support her son. "Gentlemen and ladies of the committee," Cole concluded his testimony, "the operations I've described represent a fundamental failure of our legal system to protect vulnerable individuals. Current laws treat these cases as civil disputes rather than the organized criminal enterprises they are. We need federal statutes with real teeth, mandatory minimum sentences for romance fraud, asset recovery provisions that prioritize victims, and most importantly, a federal task force dedicated to identifying and dismantling these operations before they destroy more lives." The committee chair nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Your testimony has been invaluable. I'm pleased to inform you that we're moving forward with the Marriage Fraud Prevention Act, which incorporates many of your recommendations." After the hearing, Cole was approached by a woman in her 30s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes. "Mr. Ewing? I'm Camille Carson. I represent the National Organization for Victim Assistance. We'd like to offer you a position on our board of directors. Your expertise in identifying and prosecuting these types of crimes will be invaluable." Cole considered it. More work, more time away from Michael, but also more opportunity to prevent what had happened to him, and to Daniel Osborne, and to Jerome Green, and to dozens of others from happening to anyone else. "I'd be honored," he said. That evening, Cole returned to Phoenix and picked up Michael from his mother's hotel. They went to their favorite park, the same one where he'd said goodbye to Courtney 2 years ago, and Cole pushed his son on the swings while the sun set behind the mountains. "Daddy, higher!" Michael shrieked with delight. Cole pushed higher, watching his son laugh with pure joy. This child, who'd been conceived as part of a con, who'd been meant to be a weapon in someone else's plan to destroy Cole's life, had instead become the center of his world. The reason he fought so hard for justice. The reminder that good could come from even the darkest circumstances. His phone rang. "Morris Steele. Just got word from Francis. They arrested 3 more operatives in Atlanta, all connected to Fritz's network. That's the last of them. The operation is completely shut down." "Good," Cole said. "What about Whitehead and Fritz? Any appeal activity?" Whitehead tried to file for a mistrial based on prosecutorial misconduct. Judge dismissed it. "Fritz isn't even bothering. I think she knows she's done." "She is." Cole pushed Michael higher, eliciting more delighted screams. "We all are. Time to move on." "Agreed. Hey, I'm thinking about writing a book about this whole thing. Would you be willing to contribute? Share your side of the story?" Cole thought about it. His instinct was to decline. He'd never wanted the spotlight. But maybe telling the story could help others recognize the warning signs, avoid becoming victims themselves. "Yeah," he said, "I'll do it. But only if we focus on the victims and the operatives who chose to change. I want people to understand how these cons work, how anyone can be vulnerable, and how important it is to trust your instincts." "Perfect. I'll be in touch." After they hung up, Cole lifted Michael from the swing and held him close. The boy wrapped his arms around Cole's neck, trusting and secure. "I love you, buddy," Cole said. "Love you too, Daddy." Simple words, but they meant everything. As they walked back to the car, Cole reflected on the journey that had led him here. The betrayal that could have destroyed him, but instead had forged him into someone stronger. the victims who become allies, the enemies who become cautionary tales. Most importantly, he learned that winning wasn't about crushing your opponents or proving your superiority. Winning was about standing up for what was right, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, and building something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Cole Ewing had won, not because he defeated Melissa, or Whitehead, or Fritz. He'd won because he'd become the man he was always meant to be, the man his son would grow up admiring, learning from, and hopefully emulating. And that victory, more than any courtroom triumph or public recognition, was the one that truly mattered. As he buckled Michael into his car seat and drove home through the Phoenix evening, Cole smiled. The past was behind him. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and opportunities. He was ready for all of it. Epilogue. 5 years later, Cole Ewing sat in his office at the National Organization for Victim Assistance, reviewing case files. The Marriage Fraud Prevention Act had passed, creating new federal penalties for organized romance scams and establishing a victim restitution fund. Dozens of operations similar to Whitehead's and Fritz's had been dismantled across the country. Michael, now 7, was in 2nd grade and showing signs of inheriting Cole's analytical mind. The boy loved puzzles, strategy games, and asking endless questions about how things worked. Cole made sure to nurture that curiosity while also teaching him empathy, kindness, and the importance of standing up for others. Cole had never remarried. He dated occasionally, but carefully, with full transparency about his past and his priorities. His focus was Michael and his work. Everything else was secondary. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant. He'd hired Courtney Osborne after she finished her nursing degree and decided she wanted to help fraud victims in a different capacity. Stuck her head in. "Cole, there's someone here to see you." She says it's about Melissa. Cole's stomach tightened. Melissa had been released from prison 6 months ago after serving 10 years of her 12-year sentence. She'd attempted to contact him twice, both times through official channels, requesting to see Michael. Cole had refused both times. "Who is it?" She says her name is Jennifer Fitzgerald. She was one of Whitehead's operatives, but she testified against him. She's been working with the FBI's task force to identify other victims. Cole remembered her, a young woman who'd been recruited right out of college, did one con, and immediately realized she couldn't live with what she'd done. Her testimony had been crucial in establishing the pattern of recruitment and training. Sent her in. Jennifer entered, looking nervous but determined. She'd aged well. Her face had lost the haunted look Cole remembered from the trial, as she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd done hard work to rebuild their life. "Mr. Ewing, thank you for seeing me. Call me Cole. What's this about Melissa?" "I've been working with the reentry program that helps former operatives reintegrate into society. Melissa is one of my cases. She's struggling. Guilt, depression, suicidal ideation. She talks constantly about her son, about Michael, and how she destroyed his life before it even began." Cole kept his expression neutral. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she wrote you a letter, and the program director asked me to deliver it personally, to explain that she's not asking for forgiveness or contact or anything else. She just needs you to know that she's sorry, that she understands what she did, and that she hopes Michael grows up happy." She handed Cole an envelope. He opened it and read, "Cole, I don't expect you to read this, or care, or respond. I have no right to ask anything of you. But I need to say these things, even if only for myself. I destroyed your life, or tried to. I manipulated you, lied to you, planned to take everything from you. And worst of all, I used an innocent child as a weapon in that plan. There is no excuse for any of it. I tell myself I was desperate, broken, recruited into something I didn't fully understand. But the truth is I knew. Every step of the way, I knew I was hurting people, and I did it anyway because it was easier than facing my own failures. Michael is 7 now, I read. 2nd grade. Loves science and soccer. I keep tabs through the victim advocacy website. Not stalking, just needing to know he's okay. That you're raising him well. That I didn't completely destroy his chance at a good life. You gave him that chance. You could have walked away. He wasn't your biological son, and you had every legal right to let him go into the system. But you didn't. You chose love over genetics, principle over convenience. You're the father I was never capable of being a mother to match. I'm writing this in a halfway house in Tucson. I've been out 6 months. I have a job as a grocery store clerk. I attend therapy 3 times a week. I volunteer at a women's shelter, trying to help others avoid the path I took. I'm building something, not a good life, exactly, but maybe an honest one. It's the best I can do. I will never contact you or Michael again. This is goodbye, and it's permanent. Please tell him, when he's old enough to understand, that his mother loved him even though she didn't know how to show it. That she made terrible choices, but that he was never one of them. That her greatest hope is that he'll be nothing like her and everything like you. Thank you for saving him. And in a way, thank you for saving me, because exposing what I did forced me to confront who I'd become, and that was the only thing that could have started my path to becoming someone better. I'm sorry for everything. Melissa. Cole read it twice, then carefully folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer. He'd keep it, not for himself, but for Michael, for when his son was old enough to understand his complicated origins and needed to know that even people who'd made terrible choices could still feel remorse. Tell her I received the letter, Cole said to Jennifer. Tell her I appreciate the apology, and I hope she finds peace. But also tell her this: the best apology is changed behavior. If she's truly sorry, she'll continue doing the hard work of rebuilding, of helping others, of being better. That's the only thing that matters. I'll tell her. Jennifer stood. Thank you, Cole, for believing people can change. A lot of the people I work with, former operatives trying to rebuild, they think the world will never forgive them, that they're permanently marked as criminals. Seeing you treat this with such grace, it gives them hope. Everyone deserves a second chance, Cole said, even people who've done terrible things. But second chances have to be earned. And part of earning them is accepting that some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some relationships can't be salvaged. Sometimes moving forward means leaving the past behind completely. After Jennifer left, Cole sat in silence for a long time, thinking about the letter, about Melissa, about all the lives that have been damaged and rebuilt in the wake of this case. His phone rang. Michael's school. Mr. Ewing? This is Principal Young. Nothing's wrong, but we wanted to let you know Michael got into an altercation today. He saw a 5th grader bullying a 2nd grader and intervened. The 5th grader ended up with a bloody nose. We're suspending Michael for 3 days per school policy, but I wanted you to know he was defending someone else. Cole closed his eyes and felt a surge of pride, so intense it almost hurt. I understand. I'll pick him up now. He found Michael sitting in the principal's office, looking defiant despite a bruised knuckle. I know I'm in trouble, Michael said immediately. But Dad, he was being really mean to Connor, and Connor was crying, and nobody else was helping, so I had to do something. Cole knelt down to his son's level. You did do the right thing. Standing up for people who can't defend themselves. That's always the right choice. But we're going to talk about the difference between defending someone and hitting someone, okay? There are usually better ways to help. But there wasn't time. He was about to push Connor again. Then you did what you thought was necessary. And we'll work on better strategies for next time. But Michael, Cole waited until his son met his eyes. I'm proud of you for having the courage to intervene. Not everyone does. Michael's expression shifted from defiant to relieved to proud. Really? Really? Now, let's go home and talk about why I'm also upset that you got suspended. As they drove home, Michael chattering about the incident and everything that had led up to it, Cole felt a profound sense of completion. This child, born from deception and manipulation, was growing into exactly the kind of person the world needed more of. Someone who stood up for others, who didn't tolerate injustice, who was willing to sacrifice his own comfort to help someone else. Melissa had written that her greatest hope was that Michael would be nothing like her and everything like Cole. But Cole knew better. Michael wasn't like either of them. He was entirely himself, better than both of them, untainted by their mistakes and failures, pure in a way that only children who've been loved unconditionally can be. And that, more than any courtroom victory or legislative achievement, was Cole's real legacy. Not the criminals he'd exposed or the laws he'd helped pass, but this one child he'd chosen to love and raise and guide toward becoming the best version of himself. The story that had begun with betrayal and deception had ended with redemption and hope. Not just for Cole, but for all the victims who'd found justice, all the operatives who'd found their way to rehabilitation, and most of all, for one 7-year-old boy who'd never know how close he came to being collateral damage in someone else's criminal enterprise. Cole Ewing had won, but his victory wasn't measured in enemies defeated or cases won. It was measured in the laughter of a child who felt safe enough to stand up for others, secure enough to believe the world was fundamentally good, and love enough to know that no matter what, someone would always be there to catch him when he fell. That was the only victory that had ever mattered. And it was enough. More than enough. Perfect. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Blood Brothers. Marcus Long stood in the rain outside the small house in Detroit, watching through the grimy window as 6-year-old Tommy LeBlanc picked scraps of food off the floor. The boy's ribs showed through his torn shirt, and his eyes held the hollow look Marcus had seen too many times in war zones. Inside, Christina LeBlanc swayed on her feet, needle tracks visible on her arms. The life insurance money from her husband's death clearly funding something other than her son's welfare. Tommy's fine, she had slurred earlier when Marcus confronted her. Mind your own business. But it was Marcus's business. He'd made a promise to Russell LeBlanc in a foxhole in Afghanistan 3 years ago, moments before an IED took Russell's life. If something happens to me, take care of Christina and Tommy, Russell had whispered through blood-filled lungs. Promise me, brother. Marcus had promised, and Marcus Long never broke his word. The call to child services had been worthless. Christina had connections through her dealer, a low-level city official who made problems disappear for the right price. The system had failed Tommy, just like it had failed so many others. But Marcus wasn't the system. He was something else entirely. Standing 6'3" with the build of the man who'd spent 12 years in special forces. Marcus had learned that sometimes justice required taking matters into your own hands. His weathered face, marked by a scar from his left temple to his jawline, carried the weight of decisions most men never had to make. At 35, he'd killed 17 men in service to his country, and he'd never lost sleep over a single one. 3 weeks later, Christina LeBlanc was found dead of an apparent overdose. Her dealer, coincidentally, had been arrested the same night on charges that would put him away for 20 years. Charges based on evidence that mysteriously appeared in his apartment. Tommy was placed with Russell's sister in Colorado, where Marcus had quietly established a trust fund that would see the boy through college. Marcus drove home through the Detroit streets, past the house he'd bought with his military savings and disability pension. The neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined, the kind of place where people minded their own business and asked few questions. Perfect for a man who valued privacy. He pulled into his driveway and sat for a moment, studying the house he'd called home for 2 years. Inside, Ashley was probably asleep or pretending to be. Their marriage had been cooling for months, though Marcus couldn't quite pinpoint when or why. Maybe it was his frequent trips to check on Tommy, or the nightmares that still woke him some nights, or simply the fact that a man who'd spent his adult life in combat zones didn't easily adapt to suburban domesticity. Ashley Haynes had been a nurse at the VA hospital where Marcus received treatment for his injuries. Beautiful, blonde, with bright green eyes and a smile that could light up a room. She'd seemed to understand his struggles, had been patient with his adjustment to civilian life. They'd married after a year of dating, and for a while, Marcus thought he'd found peace. But peace, he was learning, was a fragile thing. Chapter 2, Fractures. Ashley Long stood in front of the bathroom mirror, applying makeup with practiced precision. At 28, she'd maintained the looks that had first caught Marcus's attention. But lately, Those looks served a different purpose. She was meeting Nicholas Randall for lunch, officially to discuss her application for a nursing position at his private practice, unofficially for reasons she tried not to examine too closely. Nicholas was everything Marcus wasn't: smooth, charming, financially successful. His family practice catered to Detroit's wealthy suburbs, and his BMW sat in the restaurant parking lot like a promise of a different life. He'd been pursuing Ashley for months, ever since she'd brought her resume to his office. The job offer was real, but they both knew it wasn't the only thing on the table. "You deserve better than this," Nicholas had told her during their previous lunch. "A man who appreciates what he has, who can provide the life you should be living." Ashley had tried to defend Marcus, but the words felt hollow. Her husband was a good man, she knew that. Honorable, loyal, protective. But he was also distant, haunted by whatever had happened to him overseas. He'd disappear for days without explanation, claiming veteran affairs or helping other soldiers adjust to civilian life. She'd stopped asking where he went. Marcus arrived home as Ashley was leaving for her job interview. He kissed her cheek, a gesture that felt more like habit than affection. "Good luck today," he said, though something in his eyes suggested he knew more than he was letting on. "Thanks. I should be back by 3. Marcus watched her drive away in her silver Accord, noting the time, the direction, the license plate number, habits from another life that died hard. He'd been trained to observe, to gather intelligence, to read people's intentions through their actions rather than their words. And Ashley's actions lately told a story she wasn't ready to speak aloud. He spent the morning cleaning his weapons, not because they needed it, but because the routine calmed him. The Glock 19 he'd carried in Afghanistan, the K-bar knife that had saved his life in Kandahar, the Remington 870 he'd bought for home defense. Each weapon was maintained to military specifications, oiled and ready, though he hoped never to need them again. The phone rang at 11:47 a.m. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Marcus Long. This is Detective Bailey from Detroit PD. We met a few months ago regarding the LeBlanc case." Marcus remembered Corey Bailey, a good cop who tried to help Tommy before the bureaucracy shut him down. "What can I do for you, Detective?" "There's been some interest in Christina LeBlanc's death. Internal Affairs is asking questions about the timing, about who might have had access to information about her dealer's operation." Marcus's voice remained steady. "I'm sure you handled everything by the book." "I did. But Marcus," Bailey's voice dropped. "Be careful. There are people who think Russell's friends might have been more involved than they let on. People with long memories and short tempers." The line went dead. Marcus set down the phone and walked to his kitchen window, which offered a clear view of the street. A dark sedan sat at the corner, 2 men inside, one talking into a radio. They'd been there for 20 minutes. Marcus smiled grimly. He'd dealt with surveillance before, both conducting it and evading it. If someone wanted to play that game, he was ready. But first, he had other business to attend to. Ashley's lunch reservation was at noon at Romano's, an upscale Italian place downtown. Marcus knew this because he'd checked her computer history the night before. Her password was still their wedding anniversary, touchingly naive for a woman planning an affair. Chapter 3: Revelations. Marcus sat in his truck across the street from Romano's, watching through high-powered binoculars as his wife laughed at something Nicholas Randall was saying. The doctor was handsome in a polished way. Expensive suit, perfect teeth, manicured nails. The kind of man who'd never had dirt under his fingernails or blood on his hands. They were sitting in a corner booth, Ashley's hand resting on top of Nicholas's on the white tablecloth. Even from a distance, Marcus could read their body language. The way Ashley leaned toward Nicholas, how their fingers intertwined, the intimate smiles they shared. This wasn't a job interview. This was a couple in love, or at least in lust. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. But it wasn't the crushing devastation he might have expected. Instead, it was the same calm that had come over him in combat when everything went to hell, a crystalline clarity that burned away all emotion except purpose. His phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Interview running long. Might be late tonight. Don't wait up. Marcus typed back. Good luck. Love you. But love, he realized, was past tense now. He followed them from the restaurant to Nicholas's condo downtown, a converted warehouse in the trendy riverfront district. From his vantage point in a parking garage across the street, Marcus watched them disappear into the building. Ashley's car would be parked in the guest section of the underground garage. She was learning to be careful about appearances, though not careful enough. Marcus made 3 phone calls. The first was to a private investigator named Grant Cannon, a former Delta Force operator who owed Marcus a favor from their time overseas. Grant could get photos, video, whatever evidence might be needed later. The second call was to Spencer Sherman, a computer specialist who'd been in Marcus's unit before transferring to cyber warfare. Spencer could hack anything with a circuit board and had been making a very comfortable living in the private sector since his discharge. The third call was to Alfred Copeland, who officially ran a security consulting firm and unofficially provided services that fell into legal gray areas. Alfred had been Marcus's commanding officer for 3 years and understood that sometimes civilian problems required military solutions. "I need a full background workup on 2 subjects," Marcus told Alfred after exchanging pleasantries. "Nicholas Randall, family practice physician, lives downtown Detroit, and I need to know who's been watching my house. Personal or professional?" "Both." Alfred's voice carried understanding. "I'll have what you need by tomorrow. You want me to ask what this is about? Better if you don't." "Roger that. Watch your 6, Marcus." Marcus drove home, his mind already shifting from hurt husband to tactical mode. Ashley's betrayal was a wound, but wounds healed. What mattered now was gathering intelligence, identifying objectives, and developing a plan of action. He found Ashley in the kitchen when he arrived, still in her interview clothes, but somehow different. Guilty, excited. The flush in her cheeks and the way she avoided his eyes told him everything he needed to know about how her afternoon had gone. "How was the interview?" Marcus asked, settling into his chair at the kitchen table. "Good. Really good. Dr. Randall said he'll have a decision by next week." Ashley busied herself making coffee, her back to Marcus. "How was your day?" "Productive. Had some interesting conversations." Ashley turned, studying his face. Marcus had learned to school his expressions long ago, and she found nothing there but mild interest. "With who?" "Old friends. You know how it is with military guys. We like to keep in touch." That night, Ashley went to bed early, claiming exhaustion. Marcus sat in his study, a converted bedroom where he kept his military memorabilia, awards, and photographs from his service. Russell LeBlanc's picture sat on the desk, taken during their last leave together. Russell had been grinning, arm around Christina, completely unaware that his wife would betray his memory and endanger his son. Marcus opened his laptop and began typing. If Ashley wanted to play games, he'd show her how a professional played. But first, he needed to understand exactly what kind of enemies he was facing. The surveillance team, Nicholas Randall's background, Ashley's motivations, all pieces of a puzzle that would determine his next moves. By dawn, Marcus had the framework of a plan. It would be elegant, thorough, and absolutely devastating. Ashley and Nicholas thought they were writing a love story. Marcus would teach them they were actually starring in a tragedy. Chapter 4. Intelligence Gathering. The knock came at Marcus's door at exactly 0800 hours. Alfred Copeland stood on the porch, looking like any other businessman in his charcoal suit and wire-rimmed glasses. Only someone with military experience would notice the way he carried himself, the way his eyes constantly scanned for threats or the slight bulge under his left armpit. "Coffee?" Marcus asked, leading Alfred into the kitchen. "Black." Alfred set a manila folder on the table. "Your surveillance team is interesting. Detroit PD Internal Affairs, but they're not investigating you for Christina LeBlanc. They're looking for Russell's old unit because someone's been asking questions about military contractors working in Michigan." Marcus poured 2 cups and sat down. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest someone thinks Russell might have been involved in activities beyond his official military record. Someone with enough juice to get IA to do their dirty work." Alfred opened the folder, revealing photos and documents. Nicholas Randall, 32, graduated University of Michigan Medical School, established his practice 4 years ago with a loan from his father-in-law, Senator Donald Parrish. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd heard of Parrish during his military service, a defense contractor's wet dream, consistently voted for expanded military budgets, while his family's companies somehow managed to win a disproportionate number of contracts. Parrish's daughter is Elena Parrish Randall, Alfred continued. Married to Nicholas 5 years ago. Separation filed 3 months ago. Divorce proceedings ongoing. Guess who's representing her in the divorce? Marcus studied the photograph of Elena Parrish Randall. Beautiful brunette, expensive clothes, the kind of woman who'd never forgiven her husband for looking at other women. Let me guess, someone who specializes in taking cheating husbands for everything they're worth. Bingo. And get this, the separation was filed the same week Nicholas first contacted your wife about the job position. The pieces were falling into place. Nicholas wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was setting up Ashley as evidence for his own divorce proceedings. A man looking to trade one wife for another probably tried to minimize what he'd lose in the settlement. There's more, Alfred said, sliding another photograph across the table. This is Pablo Johns, Parrish's chief of staff. He's the one who got IA interested in Russell's unit. Apparently, someone convinced the senator that Russell was involved in unauthorized weapons trafficking, and Parrish wants to know if any of his old friends might have inherited the business. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Russell sold vacuum cleaners door to door before he enlisted. The most illegal thing he ever did was keep a Nazi knife he took off a dead Taliban commander. I know that. You know that. But Parrish doesn't, and he's got enough political weight to make problems for anyone associated with Russell's name. Marcus studied the intelligence reports. Senator Parrish was using his influence to investigate Russell's friends, probably as a favor to his son-in-law. Nicholas needed dirt on anyone who might interfere with his plans, and Ashley's military husband represented a potential threat to his carefully orchestrated divorce strategy. So Nicholas doesn't just want my wife, Marcus said slowly. He wants me neutralized. Alfred nodded. Looks that way. You got a choice here, Marcus. You can lay low, let them finish their investigation, and hope they don't find anything worth pursuing. Or I can remind them why Special Forces operators aren't good people to threaten. Your call. But if you decide to play offense, you'll need to be smart about it. Parrish has resources, and Nicholas has money. They can make life difficult. Marcus stood and walked to the window. The surveillance car was gone, but that didn't mean anything. They could be using different vehicles, different tactics. In Afghanistan, he learned that the enemy you couldn't see was usually the most dangerous. I need something else, Marcus said. Complete financial records on Nicholas Randall and Elena Parrish Randall. Medical practice income, assets, debts, everything. And I need to know about their social circle, who they trust, who they owe favors to, who might be willing to sell information. Alfred closed the folder. What are you planning? To keep my promise to Russell. And to teach my wife what happens when you betray someone who's killed for his country. That afternoon, Marcus received a call from Grant Cannon. The private investigator had been busy. Your wife and the doctor are creatures of habit, Grant reported. Same restaurant every Tuesday and Thursday. Same hotel room every Friday afternoon. I've got photos, video, audio recordings. Enough to end any marriage in any courtroom in America. What about their security? Sloppy. They think they're invisible because they use cash and park in different garages. But they don't check for surveillance, don't vary their routes, don't even turn off their cell phones. Amateurs. Marcus felt a familiar satisfaction. Ashley and Nicholas were operating like civilians, thinking like civilians. They had no idea they were playing against someone who'd spent 12 years learning how to hunt human beings. Keep watching them, Marcus instructed, and expand surveillance to Nicholas's wife. I want to know everything about her routine, her friends, her lawyers. Everything. Copy that. Marcus, you want some advice from an old soldier? Shoot. Whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with it. Some bridges, once you burn them, don't ever get rebuilt. Marcus hung up the phone and walked to his study. Russell LeBlanc's photo still sat on the desk, and next to it, Marcus placed a wedding photo of himself and Ashley from their honeymoon in Colorado. 2 promises made, both now broken by people who should have honored them. He opened his laptop and began typing an email to Spencer Sherman. If Nicholas Randall wanted to play politics, Marcus would show him what real warfare looked like. Chapter 5. Preparation. Spencer Sherman's fingers flew across the keyboard in his downtown Detroit apartment. Multiple monitors displaying code, financial records, and surveillance footage. The former cyber warfare specialist had built a fortress of electronics in what used to be a one-bedroom apartment, complete with signal jammers, encrypted communications, and enough computing power to hack a small government. Nicholas Randall is a very interesting man, Spencer told Marcus over a secure video call. On the surface, he's exactly what he appears to be. Successful doctor, pillar of the community, married to political royalty. But scratch a little deeper. The first monitor showed Nicholas's financial records. He's hemorrhaging money. The medical practice is barely breaking even. He's got 3 mortgages on properties he can't afford, and his wife's divorce lawyer is demanding forensic accounting on everything he owns. Marcus studied the numbers. How much debt? North of $2 million and climbing. Elena Parrish Randall isn't just divorcing him. She's trying to destroy him financially. Her father's backing her play with the best lawyers money can buy. The second monitor displayed email intercepts. But here's where it gets interesting. Nicholas has been in contact with a pharmaceutical company called MedCore Industries. They're offering him a position as chief medical officer, salary package worth about $5 million annually. What's the catch? Spencer grinned. The job offer is contingent on his divorce being finalized and his reputation remaining intact. They can't afford to hire someone involved in a messy scandal. So Nicholas needs to get divorced without looking like the bad guy, and he needs to do it fast. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. That's where Ashley comes in. He's not just having an affair. He's creating evidence that his marriage was already over before he started cheating, setting up a narrative where he's the victim of a loveless marriage who found solace with another woman. Exactly. And there's more. The third monitor showed photographs of Nicholas meeting with men Marcus didn't recognize. These are private investigators, but not the kind who take photos of cheating spouses. These guys specialize in corporate espionage, personal destruction, making problems disappear. Marcus leaned forward. What kind of problems? The kind that might testify in divorce proceedings. Nicholas has been having affairs for years, but Elena's lawyers can't prove it because his previous girlfriends have all mysteriously developed amnesia, lost evidence, or simply disappeared from Detroit altogether. The pattern was clear now. Nicholas Randall wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a predator who used his connections and resources to silence anyone who threatened his carefully constructed image. Ashley wasn't his first victim. She was just the latest in a line of women who'd served his purposes and been discarded when convenient. What about Elena? Marcus asked. Spencer pulled up another file. Elena Parrish Randall is not someone you want as an enemy. Daddy might be the one with the Senate seat, but she's the one with the brains. Graduated Harvard Law, worked for the Justice Department before marriage, still has connections throughout federal law enforcement. Why isn't she using those connections to destroy Nicholas? Because she's playing a longer game. Elena wants to take Nicholas for everything he's worth, but she also wants to preserve the family's political reputation. A messy divorce with allegations of criminal behavior would damage her father's career. So she's being surgical, destroy Nicholas financially and personally, but keep it out of the headlines. Marcus stood and walked to his window. The surveillance team was back, different car this time, but the same pattern. They weren't trying to hide anymore, which meant they wanted him to know he was being watched. Psychological pressure, meant to make him nervous, make him do something stupid. Spencer, I need you to do something for me. Can you access Elena Parrish Randall's communications? That's federal law enforcement royalty, Marcus. Her emails are probably more secure than the Pentagon's. I'm not asking you to hack her emails. I'm asking you to deliver a message. Spencer's expression grew cautious. What kind of message? Marcus outlined his plan. It was elegant in its simplicity. Use Elena's desire for revenge against Nicholas to serve his own purposes, while giving her what she wanted most. Evidence that would destroy her husband's reputation and his future prospects. That's actually brilliant, Spencer admitted. But you're playing with fire. If Elena figures out you're manipulating her, she won't. Because everything I'm going to give her is true, and everything I'm asking for in return is something she already wants to do. That evening, Marcus sat in his truck outside Ashley's yoga class, watching her through the studio windows. She was beautiful, graceful, completely unaware that her husband was planning the systematic destruction of her lover and everyone who'd chosen to threaten him. His phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Going out with the girls after class. Don't wait up. Marcus knew the girls was code for Nicholas. They'd probably go to their usual hotel, make love like they were teenagers, talk about their future together once Ashley divorced her damaged war veteran husband. Nicholas would promise her the world, paint pictures of a life filled with money and security and social status. Marcus typed back, have fun. Love you. But love was a luxury he could no longer afford. Russell LeBlanc had died trusting Marcus to take care of his family, and Marcus had kept that promise through blood and violence. Now Ashley was breaking her promise to love and honor her husband, and Nicholas was using her to threaten Marcus's freedom and future. Some promises were sacred. Others were just words people said before they showed you who they really were. Marcus drove home through the quiet streets, past the surveillance car that was trying too hard to look invisible. Tomorrow, he would begin teaching everyone involved why betraying a special forces operator was the kind of mistake you only made once. His phone rang as he pulled into his driveway. Alfred Copeland's voice was tense. Marcus, we've got a problem. One of Russell's old squad mates, Don Parrish, no relation to the senator, was found dead in his apartment in Chicago. Apparent suicide, but the timing suspicious. Marcus felt cold rage building in his chest. Someone's cleaning house. Looks that way. Don had been asking questions about who was investigating Russell's unit. Whoever's behind this doesn't want word getting out that they're targeting military veterans. Marcus hung up the phone and sat in his truck, watching his house, thinking about Russell LeBlanc and Don Parrish and all the promises made to dead men who trusted their brothers to keep them. Tomorrow, the war would begin in earnest. Chapter 6. The Trap. Elena Parrish Randall sat in her father's study in Bloomfield Hills, reviewing financial documents that painted a picture of her husband's spectacular greed and stupidity. At 31, she possessed her father's political instincts and her mother's ruthless intelligence, wrapped in the kind of devastating beauty that made men underestimate her until it was too late. The anonymous email had arrived at precisely the right moment. Detailed financial records showing Nicholas's debts, photographs of his meetings with Medcore Industries executives, and most importantly, evidence of his systematic intimidation of previous mistresses. Everything she needed to destroy him completely, delivered by someone who clearly wanted Nicholas Randall to suffer. The question, she murmured to her father, is who our anonymous benefactor might be and what they want in return. Senator Donald Parrish looked up from his own papers. At 62, he was the kind of politician who'd survived 4 decades in Washington by understanding that information was the ultimate currency. Someone with access to private investigators, financial records, and intimate knowledge of Nicholas's activities. Someone with military or law enforcement connections. Elena studied the photographs again. Someone who wants Nicholas destroyed as badly as I do. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Romano's restaurant, tomorrow at noon. Come alone. Bring the documents I sent you. Elena smiled. She'd been looking forward to meeting her mysterious ally. Marcus arrived at Romano's 30 minutes early, taking a corner table with clear views of all entrances and exits. He wore a dark suit that concealed the Glock holstered at his hip, and his appearance had been carefully calculated to suggest military precision without obvious threat. He needed Elena to see him as a resource, not an enemy. She arrived exactly on time, moving through the restaurant with the confidence of someone who'd never been afraid of anything in her life. Tall, elegant, expensively dressed, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She slid into the seat across from Marcus without hesitation. You must be the husband, Elena said without preamble. Marcus Long, and you must be the woman who's going to help me destroy your husband. Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. I like a man who gets straight to the point. What do you want, Mr. Long? Marcus slid a manila envelope across the table. Complete surveillance records of Nicholas and my wife's affair. Dates, times, locations, photographs, audio recordings. Everything you need to prove adultery in your divorce proceedings. Elena opened the envelope, scanning the contents with professional interest. This is quite thorough, but I assume you want something in return. 3 things. First, I want your father's investigation into Russell LeBlanc's unit called off. It's based on false information designed to serve Nicholas's interests. Done. Daddy's already having second thoughts about that favor to Nicholas. Second, I want information about the people Nicholas hired to intimidate his previous girlfriends. Names, contacts, payment records. Elena's eyes narrowed. Planning some intimidation of your own? Planning to prevent them from intimidating anyone else. And the third thing? Marcus leaned forward. When Nicholas's world falls apart, and it will, I want your word that you won't interfere with whatever happens to him next. Elena studied Marcus for a long moment, seeing something in his eyes that made her glad they were on the same side. You're not planning to divorce your wife, are you? You're planning something much more permanent. I'm planning to keep the promises I've made. Everything else is just details. Elena extended her hand across the table. Mr. Long, I believe we're going to be excellent partners. They shook hands, and Marcus felt the final piece of his plan slide into place. Elena Parrish Randall was exactly what he'd hoped for. Intelligent, ruthless, and completely committed to destroying Nicholas Randall. With her resources and his skills, they would tear apart everything Nicholas had built, piece by piece. That night, Marcus sat in his study, cleaning his weapons while Ashley slept in their bedroom. Tomorrow, she would discover that her husband knew about the affair, but not in the way she expected. Tomorrow, Nicholas would learn that threatening a Special Forces operator's family had consequences that extended far beyond anything he could imagine. Marcus opened his laptop and typed a brief email to Grant Cannon. Execute Phase 1 tomorrow morning. Full surveillance package to Elena Parrish Randall by noon. Audio recordings to Ashley Long by 2 p.m. He closed the laptop and picked up Russell LeBlanc's photograph. Almost done, brother, he whispered. Just a little longer. Outside, the surveillance car sat in its usual position, the 2 men inside probably wondering why their target seemed so calm, so controlled. They didn't understand that Marcus had spent 12 years learning how to hunt, and that the best hunters always let their prey come to them. Tomorrow, the predators would become the prey. Chapter 7. First Blood. Ashley Long stood in the kitchen, staring at the manila envelope that had arrived by courier 30 minutes earlier. Her name was typed across the front in block letters, and inside were photographs that made her stomach turn. Herself and Nicholas in the hotel room, at restaurants, in his condo. Dozens of images spanning 3 months, chronicling every moment of their affair with professional precision. The note attached was brief. Your husband knows. Come home immediately if you want to save your marriage. Otherwise, keep walking and don't look back. Ashley's hand shook as she dialed Nicholas's number. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried his office, his condo, even his country club. Nothing. It was as if Nicholas Randall had simply vanished from the face of the earth. Marcus arrived home at exactly 3 p.m., as the note had promised. He found Ashley sitting at the kitchen table, the photograph spread in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. We need to talk, Ashley said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus hung up his jacket and sat down across from her. His face showed no emotion, no anger, no hurt, just the calm expression she'd learned to fear during their worst arguments. About what? Marcus asked. You know what? Ashley gestured at the photographs. How long have you known? Known what, Ashley? That my wife has been fucking another man for 3 months? That she's been lying to me every day, planning to leave me for someone with more money? That she's been meeting with lawyers about divorce proceedings while pretending everything was fine at home? Each word hit Ashley like a physical blow. Marcus's voice remained calm, conversational, as if he were discussing the weather rather than the destruction of their marriage. Marcus, I can explain. No need. You fell in love with someone else. It happens. People grow apart, find they want different things. I understand. Ashley looked up at him, confused by his reasonable tone. You understand? Of course. You married a broken soldier with nightmares and trust issues. Nicholas offered you a different life, money, status, stability. I can see the appeal. Then why? Ashley gestured at the photographs again. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Because you lied to me, Ashley. For months, you looked me in the eye and lied. You made plans behind my back, used our marriage as cover while you build a new life with another man. That's not falling out of love. That's betrayal. The word hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. What do you want me to do? Ashley asked. Pack your things. Take whatever you need. Move in with Nicholas. Start your new life. Just don't pretend this was about love or compatibility or any other noble bullshit. This was about you deciding I wasn't good enough anymore and being too cowardly to say so. Ashley stood up, anger finally breaking through her guilt. You want to know why I cheated? Because you're never here, Marcus. You disappear for days, won't tell me where you go or what you're doing. You wake up screaming in the middle of the night. You sit in this house, cleaning guns like you're preparing for war. I felt like I was married to a ghost. Marcus nodded as if she'd made a perfectly reasonable point. You're right. I'm not an easy man to live with. That's why you should have left instead of cheating. I try to make it work. No, you try to have it both ways. Keep the security of being married while exploring other options. That's not trying to make it work. That's hedging your bets. Ashley stared at him, seeing something in his eyes that made her take a step backward. What happened to Nicholas? I can't reach him anywhere. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, Ashley saw something dangerous in the expression. Why don't you ask Elena Parrish-Randall? I'm sure she'd love to discuss her husband's whereabouts. The blood drained from Ashley's face. You told his wife? I didn't have to. Elena's been watching Nicholas for months, building a case for their divorce. She has photographs of every woman he's been with, financial records showing his debts, evidence of him intimidating his previous mistresses into silence. Nicholas has been playing this game for years, Ashley. You were just the latest victim. Ashley sank back into her chair as the full scope of her situation became clear. Nicholas hadn't been planning to leave his wife for her. He'd been using her as ammunition in his divorce proceedings, setting up a narrative where his marriage had failed due to irreconcilable differences rather than his own infidelity. But you already knew that, Marcus continued. Elena's lawyers contacted you yesterday morning, offered to pay for your testimony about Nicholas pursuing a married woman, about him promising to leave his wife, about all the lies he told you to get you into bed. Ashley's silence was confirmation enough. So here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, standing up. You're going to take Elena's money and testify against Nicholas. You're going to help her destroy him in court, take him for everything he's worth. And when that's done, you're going to disappear from Detroit and never contact me again. And if I don't, Marcus's smile widened. Then I'll release the photographs to your nursing supervisors, to your family, to everyone you've ever worked with or cared about. I'll make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of woman you are. Ashley looked at the man she'd married, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not a broken soldier struggling with civilian life, but a predator who'd been watching, planning, waiting for the right moment to strike. She'd betrayed him, and now he was showing her what real betrayal looked like. I loved you, Ashley whispered. No, Marcus replied. You love the idea of me, the hero husband, the man who'd fought for his country and come home to build a quiet life with you. But you never loved the reality of who I am. And now you get to learn exactly who that is. Ashley went upstairs to pack. Marcus remained at the kitchen table, studying the photographs of his wife's betrayal with the same detached professionalism he'd once used to study enemy positions in Afghanistan. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena Parrish-Randall. Nicholas found in his office this morning. Apparent suicide. Left a full confession about his financial crimes and previous affairs. Divorce proceedings concluded in my favor. Thank you for your assistance. Marcus deleted the text and smiled. Nicholas Randall would never threaten anyone's family again. Chapter 8. Dominoes Fall. The news of Nicholas Randall's suicide dominated Detroit's social media for exactly 48 hours before Elena Parrish-Randall's lawyers released documents that transformed the story from tragedy to cautionary tale. Financial fraud, systematic intimidation, serial adultery. The man who'd appeared to be a pillar of the community was revealed as a predator who destroyed lives for sport. Ashley sat in her sister's apartment in Chicago, watching the news coverage with growing horror. The suicide note, read aloud by a stone-faced police detective, painted Nicholas as a man overwhelmed by guilt over his treatment of women, his financial crimes, his betrayal of his wife's trust. There was no mention of murder, no suggestion of foul play, just a broken man who'd finally faced the consequences of his actions. But Ashley knew better. She'd seen something in Marcus's eyes, heard something in his voice that told her Nicholas's death was no suicide. Her husband, ex-husband now, the divorce papers had been filed within hours of her leaving Detroit, had killed before. She'd always known that, had seen the commendations and service records that spoke in euphemisms about direct action and neutralizing threats. What she never understood was that Marcus viewed betrayal as a type of warfare. Her phone rang. Elena Parashrandal's name appeared on the caller ID. Ms. Haynes. Elena's voice was crisp, professional. I wanted to thank you for your testimony in my divorce proceedings. Your willingness to speak truthfully about my late husband's behavior was illuminating. I just told the truth about what he promised me. Of course. And I want you to know that the financial settlement we discussed will be honored in full. $200,000 deposited into the account you specified. Ashley closed her eyes. Blood money, payment for helping destroy the man she'd thought she loved. What about the investigation into his death? What investigation? The police found no evidence of foul play. Nicholas left detailed records of his financial irregularities, confessions of his affairs, even a complete list of the women he'd intimidated into silence over the years. He'd been planning his suicide for weeks. You don't really believe that. Elena's silence stretched long enough to make Ashley uncomfortable before she spoke again. Ms. Haynes, my late husband was a predator who destroyed lives for his own gratification. He used his position, his connections, and his family's resources to silence victims and escape consequences. If someone helped him face justice, I consider that a public service. The line went dead. Ashley stared at her phone, understanding that she'd just been warned to keep her mouth shut about her suspicions. Elena Parashrandal was exactly as dangerous as Marcus had suggested, and she was protecting him because he'd serve her interests. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in a downtown Detroit bar, nursing a beer and watching the news coverage of Nicholas's suicide. The bartender, a former Marine named Angelo Anderson, kept glancing at the television with obvious disgust. Guy like that, Angelo muttered, makes you wonder how many other pieces of shit are walking around in expensive suits, hiding behind money and connections. Marcus nodded, saying nothing. The bar was the kind of place where military veterans gathered to drink away memories they couldn't share with civilians, and Angelo had been one of Russell LeBlanc's friends before Russell deployed to Afghanistan. He'd attended Russell's funeral, had offered to help Marcus with anything he needed. You hear about that investigation into Russell's unit? Angelo asked. Heard it got dropped. Turns out it was based on false information. Angelo's expression darkened. False information from who? Marcus finished his beer and stood up. From people who aren't in a position to provide any more information. Angelo studied Marcus's face, reading the subtext. Good. Russell was a good man. Didn't deserve to have his memory pissed on by some politician's pet projects. Marcus left money on the bar and walked out into the Detroit evening. The surveillance team was gone, had been gone since Nicholas's suicide hit the news. Apparently, Senator Parrish had decided his investigation into Russell's unit was no longer a priority. His phone buzzed with a text from Grant Cannon. Package delivered to Chicago address. Subject, confirmed receipt. The package contained photographs of Ashley and Nicholas, copies of the financial records Elena had provided, and a detailed report on Nicholas's history of intimidating his victims. Everything Ashley would need to understand exactly what kind of man she'd fallen in love with, and exactly how she'd been manipulated. Marcus drove home through familiar streets, past the house where he'd tried to build a civilian life with a woman who'd never understood what she'd married. The house was empty now, Ashley's belongings gone, her presence erased as thoroughly as if she'd never existed. He sat in his study, surrounded by photographs and commendations from his military service, and opened his laptop. 3 emails waited in his secure account, each one confirming that loose ends have been tied up, that threats have been neutralized, that justice had been served. The men Nicholas had hired to intimidate his previous victims have been arrested on various charges: assault, extortion, drug possession. Elena's investigators had been very thorough in providing evidence to appropriate authorities. None of them would be threatening anyone else for a very long time. Don Parrish's death in Chicago had been ruled a suicide, but Marcus knew better. Someone had been cleaning house, eliminating potential witnesses to the false investigation of Russell's unit. That someone was now sitting in a federal prison, having been arrested for unrelated firearms violations based on an anonymous tip to the ATF. Senator Parrish had announced his retirement from politics, citing health concerns and a desire to spend more time with his family. Elena had provided her father with enough information about his association with Nicholas to convince him that a quiet exit from public life was preferable to a public scandal. Marcus closed the laptop and walked to his bedroom. For the first time in months, he expected to sleep without nightmares. The promises he'd made to Russell LeBlanc had been kept. The threats to his own safety had been eliminated. The people who betrayed him had faced consequences appropriate to their crimes. Tomorrow, he would begin rebuilding his life. But tonight, he would sleep the sleep of a man who'd completed his mission and come home victorious. Chapter 9. Resolution. 6 months later, Marcus Long stood in the cemetery where Russell LeBlanc was buried, holding the hand of a 6-year-old boy who bore his father's eyes and his mother's delicate features. Tommy LeBlanc had grown 3 inches and gained 15 pounds since coming to live with his aunt in Colorado, and his nightmares had finally stopped. "Uncle Marcus," Tommy said, using the title Marcus had taught him, "Daddy would be proud of you, wouldn't he?" Marcus knelt beside the grave marker, straightening the American flag that marked Russell's service. "What makes you say that, buddy?" "Aunt Sarah says you kept your promise to take care of me. She says promises to dead people are the most important kind." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, a tension he'd carried for so long he'd forgotten it was there. "Your daddy was my best friend, Tommy. Taking care of you isn't a burden, it's an honor." They stood together in the Colorado sunshine, 2 survivors of different wars, bound together by love for a man who died believing his sacrifice meant something. Marcus had established a trust fund that would see Tommy through college, had arranged for the best therapist money could buy, had made sure the boy would never want for anything. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Spencer Sherman. Ashley Haynes married insurance salesman in Phoenix last month. Living quietly, no contact with anyone from Detroit. Thought you should know. Marcus deleted the text without responding. Ashley was part of his past now, a closed chapter in a story that had moved beyond her relevance. He'd kept his promise not to destroy her publicly, and she'd kept her promise to disappear from his life. Some endings didn't require revenge. Exile was punishment enough. Another text, this one from Elena Parrish Randall. "Father's retirement party next month. You should come. I think you'd enjoy meeting some of his old defense contractor friends. They're always looking for security consultants with your particular skills." Marcus smiled at that. Elena had proven to be exactly the kind of ally he'd hoped for. Intelligent, connected, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting her interests. She'd transformed her father's political connections into a business empire, and she made it clear that Marcus would always have a place in her organization. The work she offered was legal, lucrative, and perfectly suited to his skills. Corporate security, threat assessment, problem resolution for clients who prefer discretion over publicity. It was a chance to use his military training in service of people who understood the value of loyalty and the cost of betrayal. "Are we going home now?" Tommy asked. Marcus looked down at the boy who'd become the closest thing to family he had left. "Yeah, buddy, we're going home." They walked back to Marcus's truck, Tommy chattering about school and friends and the baseball team he'd joined. Normal childhood concerns, the kind Russell had dreamed his son would have. Marcus listened with the attention he'd once reserved for mission briefings, filing away every detail of Tommy's happiness like evidence of a job well done. The drive back to Tommy's aunt's house took them through the Colorado mountains, past landscapes that reminded Marcus why he'd served his country in distant wars. This was what freedom looked like. Wide open spaces, children playing safely, communities where people trusted their neighbors and kept their promises. Sarah LeBlanc met them at the door, Russell's younger sister who'd inherited his sense of humor and his devotion to family. She'd welcomed Tommy without hesitation, had accepted Marcus's involvement in the boy's life with the understanding that some bonds transcended conventional definitions. "How was the visit?" Sarah asked, ruffling Tommy's hair as he ran past her into the house. "Good. He's doing well. No nightmares, good grades, making friends." Sarah studied Marcus's face with the insight that came from growing up with a brother who'd chosen military service. "And how are you doing?" "Really?" Marcus considered the question seriously. For the first time in years, he wasn't carrying the weight of unfulfilled promises or unresolved threats. Ashley was gone. Nicholas was dead. The investigation into Russell's unit had been terminated, and the men who'd threatened Marcus's future were either imprisoned or neutralized. "I'm at peace," Marcus said finally. Sarah smiled. "Russell will be glad to hear that. He worried about you, you know. You used to say you were the kind of man who'd carry the whole world's burdens if someone let you." "Maybe, but I'm learning to choose my burdens more carefully." Marcus spent the evening with Tommy and Sarah, sharing dinner and watching the boy play video games with the concentration of a future tactician. This was what Russell had died for. The chance for his son to grow up safe, happy, surrounded by people who loved him. As Marcus prepared to leave for his hotel, Tommy ran up and hugged him tightly. "I love you, Uncle Marcus," the boy whispered. Marcus knelt down and returned the hug, feeling the simple weight of unconditional trust. "I love you too, buddy. And I'll always be here when you need me." It was another promise, but this one felt different. Not a burden carried in honor of the dead, but a gift given freely to the living. Tommy would grow up knowing he was loved, protected, valued. He would understand that promises made in love were sacred, and that real men kept their word regardless of the cost. Marcus drove back to his hotel through the mountain night, thinking about the future Elena had offered him and the life he was building from the ashes of his marriage. He learned that some betrayals were unforgivable, that some enemies had to be destroyed rather than